Beautiful day in the neighborhood. You got the big boy pants on. You ready for it?
I'm just gonna do whatever you tell me.
Oh, geez, now you're really in trouble. You're really good.
We're ready, okay. Good evening, everyone. Do we have a representative from the Ministerial Alliance? Yes, please. I ask you if you could incorporate in your prayer. We have in our community now a whole lot more people sick with COVID.
Yes.
So we would like to remember them.
Absolutely. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this community. Lord, we thank you for these folks who have chosen to give their time to help to lead our city, help to lead our community. Lord, I pray for your wisdom to be upon them now. Lord, I pray that you would be with our community who is struggling with sickness, and Lord, those who are struggling financially, those who are struggling in the home. Heavenly Father, we just pray that you would bless them. We pray for your healing to be upon them. We pray for your provision to be poured out in their lives. And God, I pray that you would bless this meeting tonight. Lord, I pray that you would allow us all to have an open mind, to have open hearts, to love one another, to speak with grace, to be slow to speak, to be slow to anger, and quick to listen. And Lord, I pray that your Holy Spirit would lead us every step of the way, that we would come to the outcome that would follow your will, and that you would protect us, protect our city, protect our people, and protect our land. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I'd like to officially open the meeting. John, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. We have a short agenda but a long meeting tonight, mostly related to COVID issues. Before we get into the formal agenda, I just want to give an update. You know, one of the things that's changed is obviously we've moved some chairs around and we've taken some chairs out and we've been handing out masks. Today, the city, with respect to our own facilities, have made some changes. So for City Hall, we now require a mask unless you're in an individual office, but otherwise in the building or any of the public areas will in fact require a mask. The police department has implemented essentially the same. Rodney will speak later, so I think Rodney will give an update on some of the actions that RMU took earlier this week. And in the next couple of days, we'll be looking at the rest of the departments as well as the other facilities that are off-site, such as the center and the fire department. So with that started, on the agenda, we have no public hearings for tonight. We have one presentation, which is the RMU quarterly report. Rodney?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, thank you very much for having me tonight. Come every quarter. This is the end of our fiscal year. Right button here. And I cut a few things out. I'll try and be brief. And if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. And happy to answer any questions you might have. Like the mayor said, we also made some changes. I believe starting Monday, we did close our lobby again, our service department. We've closed that facility mainly to the public. Internal in our business office, doing the same type of thing starting Monday is everyone in the office, if they're in common areas, wearing masks. Again, we're very small staff, so we're trying to contain or keep ourselves protected as best we can, even within the office. So real quickly, this is just a summary I'm going to do. The full report is on our website like always. And again, if anyone has any questions or the public is watching, if they have any questions about anything that's in the report, they always feel free to give us a call at the office. So I'm going to move on, just our financial recap. And again, I won't go through everything, but you can see our operating revenues are down almost $2 million. That, again, we did some major rate changes, and that is why you're seeing that significant decline in revenue. And that was by design. That's an action the board took to provide some rate relief, not only rate relief to our customers, but again, to put more money back in their pockets. So we're in a good financial position, and we're making that major step. On the, but if you go down to net income, you can see that change pretty much follows right down to the bottom. Our net income, we're down to about $1.3 million compared to the same time last year. And again, we're in a very good financial position, and that was by design. That is something the board wanted to do, and we've been trying to accomplish that goal over the last several years. We've hit it a little bit harder this year. Talk about a few things going on in the electric department, mainly on Kings Highway. You can see that if you see the crews working, they're mainly working on the golf course side of Kings Highway on the north side, doing reconfiguration of power lines on the north side. On the south side, we're primarily done, but we've got to get all our work done on the north side before we can start getting all the rest of the businesses hooked up to that power line. Once we get that done, then we start removing poles along Kings Highway. So fiber optics has been done. The 34 kV line through there is de-energized, but it's getting all those distribution, all the customers, all the restaurants and businesses that are on Kings Highway moved over the new lines so we can get the old lines out of there. So working very hard on that. Let's see, we are working up at Alferman some. Ameren's doing more work at Alferman, and they're getting close to being done with their Dillon substation on the north side of town. Again, that's a project been ongoing for a couple of years, but it's a big reliability improvement for the utility. Plus, we're selling some of our assets to Ameren that they'll be operating after right about another week or so. That they should be energized and operating that substation. We expect to close our formal financial transaction at the end of the month, maybe first part of December. We did have a mutual aid event in August. One of the hurricanes, one of the more recent hurricanes that hit Louisiana, we sent a crew of 4 to Alexandria, Louisiana, in response to Hurricane Laura. We, along with I think 4 or 5 other municipal utilities in the state, went down to Alexandria and helped them out for about a week and a half. And that's pretty normal. Kind of talk about that a little bit. Usually it's co-op systems are sending their linemen to help co-op systems. Municipals will help municipal cities. And then the investor-owned utilities like Entergy, who operates down there, will typically go to contractors or go to Ameren's, KCP&Ls, those types of contractors. That's who normally responds to that. So usually when we're responding to another city electric agency. A little bit about the water department. Again, on Kings Highway, the contractor is doing the bulk of the work there, replacing that water main. I think the water main was installed in about 1966, mid-60s. So again, a very old main. We haven't had a lot of problems with it, but with a major reconstruct on that road and with a 60-plus-year-old water main, definitely we want to get that replaced, and so that we're taking care of that. And then we'll be paying the contractor through this whole street reconstruction project. That's how we'll be paying for that work. They're about done on South Olive Street, and hopefully we'll get that blacktopped. If it hasn't been blacktopped already, get out of there. We did do some side streets that had some smaller mains, and we took care of those, some 1-inch copper lines that served a few homes. We're trying to replace all those kind of while we were in here. Just some miscellaneous things. Let's see what else I got here. I won't go into the fiber training, but one of the things that I've talked about is the solar farm. A lot of people have asked, I talked about it on the radio earlier this week. So there are 11 solar farms in our power pool portfolio. So the solar farm here in Rolla, RMU or the city does not own that facility. That's owned by a private investor company. And they own the 11 solar farms. So Butler, Missouri was the first farm in our portfolio. We added 5 more about a year later. We had 5 more the year after that, making a total of 11. So the original intent was after year 7 or about year 7 in our contract to purchase power out of those, we have also purchased those solar farms. The reason we wouldn't normally construct those to start with is because as a municipal utility, we can't qualify for tax credits, federal tax credits. We're not taxable, so we don't see that savings. So typically what you'll see with cities is they'll contract someone else to build it, they will get the tax credits and provide power for a certain period of time, and then usually there's a buyout option. So Butler's coming up on its 7-year purchase option next March. So we're actively pursuing that arrangement and to exercise that arrangement with our pool to purchase that facility. The contractor has since come back and offered the ones in the next 10 offered early buyout provisions, which we probably will exercise at all, but they're giving us a discount to buy them out early to what they want to be done with them. And so we're possibly exercising that option as well. And we should know some finality on that by the end of the year. But hopefully in the next couple of years, our power pool will own all those facilities instead of a private investing company. And what that does is once we buy them, we'll have fixed financing and it'll stabilize the cost on those facilities going out to the end of their life, which is about 25 years total life on those solar farms. And the last thing I want to mention, and we probably haven't advertised it enough, but as of October 31st of this year, RMU celebrated our 75th anniversary in commercial operations. So, most people, and I think if I got the history right, is in the 1880s, the city of Rolla owned the electric system and operated, I think, the water system. About 1925, it was sold off to a private company, and I'm guessing we had a buyout option for 20 years later. So 1945 is when, 1944 is when the Board of Public Works was created under the form that we use today, and the bonds were issued, and we bought the utility back in 1945. So again, we just completed 75 years of operation. Let's see, on to the next thing. And with that, that's kind of the end of my presentation, except to say just some highlights. Normally I'd talk about some other things, but again, trying to give you an idea. So we're very financially sound, healthy organization. Our net position, so our cash in the bank, is down about $210,000. It's only about 1% over last year, so it's not a significant change. Our electric and water reserves are fully funded. Our retirement program is overfunded, and it's been that way now for several years. Again, our board, that was an initiative they took about 7-8 years ago to make sure that retirement program was fully funded, and our projected power supply costs are stable. So with that, I think that's a good roundup of kind of where we're at. So we try and manage our funds very wisely, very carefully, very conservatively, and I think that has proved to be very, very good for the last 75 years. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Rodney, I have one.
Sure.
I'm going to call it a dividend, even though it's not a dividend, but the rate reduction to the customers that we've enjoyed the last couple of years, which is a substantial amount of money. How many more years of that do we have?
I think right now it's projected to be ongoing for a while at these rates. And so when I say we reduce rates next year, you won't see much of a change at all. It's going to be kind of stabilized, and I think we'll evaluate or reevaluate that every year to see if we can continue doing that. But
All right. And for the benefit of the citizens watching, about how much are we rebating back to the customers in a year now?
That amount that we discounted was about 5-6% total. And the other thing I would
Give me dollars.
Oh, in dollars, it's probably a couple $100 over the course of the year.
Okay.
And again, I say that's averages.
Right.
If you're a lower user of energy, it's not as beneficial for you. It may not be beneficial at all. If you're a bigger user, it's more. It was also targeted more to some of our industrial customers to help them out. Again, what we're seeing was some discrepancies between some of our industrial rates and some of our, I call them competitors, but utilities in the surrounding areas, and trying to make sure we can attract business, we need to attract rates. And when those businesses come here, they employ people. Those people live here too. So it's a good thing that we do to try and promote business, and that helps more of our community and employs people.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Rodney? Lester?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rodney, what was done to commemorate the 150 years? I know we're in the current climate that we're in, but I'm just curious, what did we do? That's a significant milestone for us.
It's the 75th. It was
75th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was, with the COVID stuff going on, it was very difficult. Normally, we would have a safety awards banquet this time of year and recognize employees and years of service, all those kinds of things. We had to cancel that. We did provide some gifts to our employees for that, but really it's just been a tough thing to commemorate that. It's been tough. It's been a really tough year.
Any questions for Rodney? Rachel?
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question, Rodney, about your update about the Greenbelt project. Agreements have been mailed to around half of the property owners. Does that mean they've acquired half of the properties
No,
they need, or?
so that update came from a few months ago. We actually have a MOPET meeting this week, this Friday, and I'm going to ask the question kind of what's our status report? What that meant is the developer has communicated or somehow gotten agreements to landowners.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they've agreed to them yet, but they're actively working. And again, with the COVID crisis, it's been tough for them to get into farmers, sit at the kitchen table at a farm and talk about what they want to do.
Yeah.
But that project is moving forward.
Okay.
I haven't seen any indications yet of any type of slowdown in the project. So they do want to get that, and we want to get that project done. But kind of dovetailing on your question on rates and the Greenbelt Express, our hope is not only that our power supply costs from a pool level remain stable, we're hoping we see a reduction in those costs. And then I'm also hoping that we can translate that into more savings for our customers. And again, can't commit to that until we actually see it in reality, but that's kind of what I would like to see, is if we can pass those savings on to our customers, that's our goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rodney.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to old business, we have two items. The first is an ordinance approving of a cooperative agreement with the Phelps County Collector. John?
Does he know he's muted?
All right. Is Stephanie here? We have a way to signal John he's on mute, probably.
I'm here if you can hear me.
Okay. Stephanie, do you want to take a shot at this, or do you want me to do it?
I can give it a shot.
Go ahead.
I think John brought it up last meeting. We are basically redoing the contracts at the county. We've had a very successful partnership with them for years with placing different liens on the tax bills. Whenever different people, go through the system, retire, we are just updating the signatures for this contract. So I would be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Any questions for Stephanie? If not, can we have the final reading?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a cooperative agreement among the Phelps County Collector, Phelps County Commission, and the city of Rolla, Missouri for the collection of real estate, personal property taxes, and fees.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Is there any discussion? If not, can we have the roll call vote?
Lawrence,
Yay.
Crowell,
Yes.
Murphy. Yes. Schott,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Husch,
Yes.
12 A's.
Motion is approved. The second item is an ordinance authorizing me to enter into a contract with MSI for HVAC.
Good evening. On October 1st, we went out for bid for a 30-ton air conditioning unit for the Rolla Police Department. We received 2 bids. We recommend awarding the bid to the low bidder, Mechanical Services Incorporated out of Springfield, Missouri for $59,000.
Any questions for Jason? David?
Just a quick one. Was the issue mainly with the unit, or was there also like issues otherwise in terms of lines the way they were run, or is there anything else that needs addressed that's part of this bid?
No, the current unit is 18 years old, and it's been on the radar to be replaced for the last 5 years. It's been presented for the budget for the last 5 years, and we haven't had the funding. It's been pushed down the road, pushed down the road, pushed down the road, and it's at the end of its life cycle, the unit itself. But they'll basically just be taking the old unit out and putting a new unit in.
And that's pretty much what was causing the issues before in terms of it shutting down and not working correctly, was the unit itself?
The whole unit, so there's two pieces to the unit. You have the 30-ton unit on the roof, and then you have, I believe it's 24 individual VAV boxes scattered throughout the building that control different sections of the building. And 2 years ago, we replaced all of those boxes new and with a new control system. And then this is the other half of the project. So we should be good to go for at least 15, 20 more years
Okay.
after this.
Thanks a lot. Glad we're doing it.
Any other questions? If not, can we have the final reading?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of City of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the City of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the City of Rolla, Missouri and Mechanical Services, Inc., DBI MSI Constructors for police station HVAC replacement.
I move that the ordinance pass.
Second.
The motion made and second. Any other discussion? If not, roll call vote.
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
Eberly,
Yes.
Schott.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance is
12 ayes.
approved. Thank you, Jason. Moving on to new business, we have 3 items. One is a resolution authorizing the execution of a mutual aid agreement. Chief Smith?
Tonight, you have a mutual aid agreement between the Fort Leonard Wood Fire Department and the City of Rolla Fire and Rescue. An agreement of this nature has been in place for over the last 20 years. So this is a common document that we've seen before. Some of the wording's been updated, the commander's been updated of who's in charge of the Fort Leonard Wood Fire Department. And some of the language has been cleaned up. It's been reviewed by our city administrator and our city attorney. And I believe everything's clear through the city attorney. And we would recommend adoption of the resolution to approve this mutual aid agreement. Any questions?
Any questions for Chief?
Chief, I think John had passed it on maybe to someone about insurance who was going to just double check with the travelers, and I didn't hear back. I don't know if John did.
I did not hear back from them.
Because it'd be mutual aid with the U.S. Army, and he wanted to just make sure there wasn't anything else.
Correct. We will clarify that before we sign the agreement.
Okay,
John's on if you want to ask him.
okay.
He can't communicate back.
He what?
Can't
He can't.
communicate back. I texted him and he can't.
I might be able to now.
There he is. John, did you hear back?
I did not.
Okay. That was the only thing that was still outstanding. We think it's fine, but we're just going to have insurance look at it, make sure there's nothing in particular.
City administration was going to reach out to travelers and verify that everything within the mutual aid agreement met their requirements to cover the city's liability. That part is still pending.
Okay. So if council approves this resolution tonight, it's with the understanding that we will get that answer before we implement. Any other questions for Chief? If not, can we read the resolution?
A resolution authorizing the mayor of City of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the City of Rolla, Missouri, a mutual aid fire protection and emergency services agreement between the City of Rolla Fire and Rescue and the Fort Leonard Wood Fire Protection and Prevention Division.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Any discussion on the resolution? If not, roll call vote.
Allen,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
12 ayes.
Resolution is approved. The next item is a resolution authorizing a license to Hoppers. Darren?
So staff received a request from Hopper's Pub to install a frog statue in front of their business at 723 North Pine Street. This would be in the right of way, so that's why we're bringing this agreement to the city council. So the attached agreement would allow them to install and maintain the statue in front of their business, and the resolution would approve that. In your packet, there's a picture of what the statue looks like at their other location in Waynesville. I don't know if you can pull the overhead up, but this is what the artist that's going to carve the statue what their rendering looked like for this location.
Let's give it a minute. I'm assuming we're trying to put it up or no?
Is there anything that states that they have to keep it so far away from the curb and closer to the dwelling or anything like that?
So what we put in the agreement is they've got to at least maintain a 5-foot ADA compliant, area around the statue, and require some sort of anchoring so it can't be easily turned over.
Gotcha.
Steve? I thought Ursula was going to be here if anybody had any questions for her.
Okay. So we don't have a way to put it on the screen? No. Let me ask in the essence of time, does council want to see this before we move it forward?
We've got a picture of it.
Well, it's actually a little bit different, but,
Oh. Can you just pass it around?
Yeah,
yeah, if you please.
I don't really care.
Oh, that's cute.
I'm guessing.
Darren, how big are the measurements on the base? Ballpark?
It was in the agreement.
Well, I'd hate that to fall on me.
18 to 20 inches.
Is that included in that?
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Obviously, other business owners might see this and like to do something similar. Do we have any concerns or issues with allowing this type of thing? I mean, personally, I think that these kinds of things add a little bit of character to our downtown. People walk by, they kind of get a sense of something's happening, there's a little more energy, these kinds of things. So I like the idea. I'm just curious if it's going to bring up other folks that are interested in doing something similar, and if it's okay if we consider those too, I guess.
I think you should reserve judgment until those situations arise, only because in this day of free speech, what one person might find acceptable and cute, the next person might not. So if we do get multiple requests, perhaps we set up some body or the Downtown Business Association or somebody to maybe take a stab at that, if you will. But again, I think you cross that bridge when you come to it. But I like you, I agree, it does think it gives character, but again, sometimes people find some things to be sick jokes. Ann?
Do we know what color it'll be?
I do not.
I understand it'll be anchored. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It can't topple over.
Right.
Okay, so council saw the picture. Is there any questions before we read the resolution? Can we read the resolution?
A resolution authorizing the mayor, City of Rolla, Missouri, to execute on behalf of the City of Rolla, Missouri, a grant of license by the City of Rolla, Missouri between JUL LLC, Inc. and the City of Rolla for the construction and maintenance of the frog statute as presented at the meeting and not the one in the packet.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made and second. Any discussion? If not, roll call vote.
Crowell,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
Everly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
12 ayes.
Resolution is approved. The last item under new business is an ordinance authorizing me to execute a City Hall lease. John?
Yeah, let's see if we can do this again. Back in 2005, when the city did the refinancing at City Hall, we did a lease purchase financing through Bank of America at the time. The interest rate was 4.3%. Over the last several years, we've been interested in refinancing that, trying to drop that interest rate, and Bank of America just simply was not willing to do that under the terms of that lease, and there was no provision for a early payoff without paying a premium on a refinancing. So just recently, that loan was sold with another number of other assets to First State Community Bank. So we reached out to them several months ago, but we were able to just get this resolved recently, where they were willing to allow us to do a refinancing and to waive any early refinancing or closing requirements. The proposed rate is 2.95%. There's only 5 years left, about 4.5 years left in that note, but it will save us, it'll net us about $17,400 in interest savings, and that includes paying about $7,500 worth of legal fees to verify the tax-exempt status of the refinancing and to prepare the documents for recording. Many of those documents are included in the council packet. Normally, there wouldn't be any urgency to this, and if council would like to take 2 meetings, they can, but we've been losing an opportunity for interest savings for a couple of years trying to get this through, and we're proposing just doing a first and final reading tonight if council so desires, and then allow the closing to take place sooner, and we'll get that full realization of interest savings. Otherwise, we'll just bring it back in the 1st of December, but we'd like to move forward with it.
Any questions for John?
Yeah, John, this is Lister. Is there a possibility of that we make the difference that we can pay it directly to the principal, or is that an option?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
The savings, John, would they go to principal?
Yeah, it's both the it's interest savings, and so more of our payment, we'll save about $3,000-4,000 on each of our semi-annual payments, and that will just go to paying that principal off sooner then.
And the yearly expense, John, if I'm not mistaken, is $100,000, give or take? What's the monthly yearly payment?
I'm sorry?
What's the yearly payment? I forgot.
I'm sorry, I'm just not understanding that.
Okay, in the essence of,
This is Stephanie. It's about $97,000 a year for the annual, semi-annual payment.
okay, thank you, Stephanie, it's kind of what I thought. So in reality, what'll probably happen, council, is that there's infrastructure needs that are deteriorating every day. So in all likelihood, when this is paid off, there'll be another financing to address and keep the infrastructure up. So that's at least our plan at this point.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? If not, can we have the first reading?
An ordinance approving the First Amendment to lease with option to purchase agreement to the City of Rolla, Missouri and First State Community Bank and authorizing the execution of certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules and have the second reading?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Lori, Christine was a yes. Christine is on the screen.
Yes.
No.
Oh,
Final reading, please.
An ordinance approving the First Amendment to lease with option to purchase agreement between the City of Rolla, Missouri and the First State Community Bank and authorizing the execution of certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Is there a motion?
Motion. Second.
Motion made and second. Any additional discussion? If not, roll call vote.
Eberly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy. Yes. Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes?
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Schott, Florence.
Yay.
12 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Thank you. Moving on to claims and/or fiscal transaction, we have one. Chief Smith?
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight. Before you, a request to purchase a 2021 full-size Ford, or I'm sorry, full-size, not Ford, SUV. It was bid as a support vehicle with extra, it's beefed up a little bit, to say the least, to allow it to provide the necessary weight handling, cargo space, Cargo space is very important to us. As you see, it was not the low bid. The low bid does not have the cargo space that we were requiring. It's about 21 cubic feet less than what we needed for this vehicle. And so we're asking you to approve the bid that was submitted by Don Brown Chevrolet.
Any questions for Chief? If not, is there a motion to award the bid?
Make
as-
a motion.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Christine, is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. Moving under Mayor City Council comments, we have quite a number of here. These are a little more meaty than we normally put in this particular section. So let's start with, I guess we have here a legal review. Carolyn?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At the last meeting, it's hard to talk in mass, but we'll keep doing it. At the last meeting, during council comments, one member began to discuss a closed session from a previous meeting regarding a personnel matter. Having no idea what the discussion was at that meeting, nor knowing what the council person planned to say, I felt it prudent as city attorney to advise you all that any comments regarding closed session should be made in keeping with the parameters of the Sunshine Law provisions. Mr. Schott expressed we weren't able to discuss that in open session, and later Mr. Schott expressed his frustration in not being able to make any statements, which I do understand. However, he indicated that without counsel at the prior closed sessions, his questions were unanswered, and also mentioned he thought he wanted a legal opinion from another attorney outside of our firm. At that time, I told Mr. Schott if he had questions to send them to me and I would answer what I could. I reminded him again that if he didn't like my answer, that didn't mean I could change my legal opinion, nor did it mean he was entitled as a council member to be provided a second opinion. If getting an opinion of counsel was a problem from those closed sessions, no one sent me any questions before the second meeting and before this last meeting to answer them. So not sure if they were really legal concerns that were unanswered before the matter was brought up in open session. Based on the tone and the suggestion of controversy at this last meeting, I felt the best approach would be to address you all before there is further consternation regarding this matter. I assure you all that as the attorney appointed to act on behalf of the city, we have no interest or intention of keeping anyone from making comments, but if any of you were to plan to speak about a closed session, including employee matters, I would have cautioned any of you. Until I knew what was planned to be said, I couldn't answer whether or not his questions or statements would violate the employee rights or the Sunshine Law, or I was unable to analyze whether there was any level of potential liability for the city. The issues that I understand were raised before the vote it was taken in closed session is whether or not there was a conflict of interest because a person hired happens to be married to one of the city attorneys. When the answer was no, there is no per se conflict and it is not nepotism. Apparently, discussion was held. There was a request for independent counsel to get a second legal opinion. After much discussion, apparently there was a vote and the employee was hired. In the subsequent email after the last meeting from Mr. Schott, he asked me not to answer his questions in a response email because he planned on reading the statement at the meeting and was only asking if there was anything he was not allowed to say by law. He also suggested in his email that he was not interested in my sharing his statement or inquiry with the city through the mayor or the city administrator, Mr. Butts. On more than one occasion, I feel I have to address this issue because on more than one occasion I have explained that I am unable to do that because the city, through the mayor and Mr. Butts, is our client and not Mr. Schott personally. So, just to make sure we're all clear on this for every member's information, if you have a legal question regarding city matters that you do not want the city to know about in advance, do not ask the city attorney your questions. I was a bit surprised that Mr. Schott seemed to suggest that my cautioning him about repeating information from a closed session was somehow collusion against transparency. However, when he suggested I was not to share his statement with my own client through the mayor, Mr. Butts, transparency is an interesting question. To some, it might suggest a personal agenda, but I choose to give him the benefit of the doubt and presume it was not his intention. With that said, I can answer those questions about procedure and hopefully put any concerns any of you may have to rest. If we address an issue in closed session, what can we say about it in open session? That's the first general question. The relevant language of Chapter 610.021, Section 3, regarding what can become public or should remain closed after a final action, including personnel, states. Any vote on a final decision when taken by a public governmental body to hire, fire, promote, or discipline an employee shall be made available with a record of how each member voted to the public within 72 hours of the close of the meeting where such action occurs. Provided, however, that any employee so affected shall be entitled to prompt notice of said decision during the 72-hour period before such decision is made available to the public. Personal information relating to the performance or merit of individuals remains a closed record. In other parts of the same statute, they specifically mention that minutes can be made public after discussion or vote. However, this section does not include that minutes become public. The information discussed about merits, applications, or qualifications of other applicants as well should remain closed. So my advice is if there are questions about the procedure, those could likely be discussed openly, but anything personal about an applicant or employee should not be discussed, most likely. Mr. Schott asked me in a follow-up email if his questions were legal, as in could he be violating the Sunshine Law, but he was also asking if the discussion on the topic was permissible. I did try to explain that because I cannot be certain where a discussion may lead and what else anyone else might say or what specific questions they might add, beyond the specific questions themselves, all I can do is counsel or suggest if you must discuss something from a closed session, you should all do so cautiously and again within the parameters set forth in the statute I just read, if it's in a personnel matter. The second issue is the hiring of a city clerk who is married to a city attorney, both non-elected positions appointed by a mayor, a conflict of interest? The simple answer is no. Could a conflict of interest ever arise? Well, yes. Of course, there could be conflicts of interest that could apply to anybody sitting here today. What we analyze are what's probable, not as much as what's possible or imaginable. When we assess potential conflicts, if it's not a per se conflict ethically or by statute, it requires that we deal with it on a case-by-case basis as the facts arise that may create one. Almost every office, organization, board, and attorney's offices with practices always have practices and methods by which practically any potential conflict could be addressed and averted, as well as identified. Is hiring a spouse of a city attorney nepotism? No. Nepotism, as defined in the Missouri Constitution, is any public officer or employee in Missouri by virtue of their office or employment who name, appoint to public office or employment any relative by fourth degree of consanguinity or affinity, so basically blood or marriage, shall hereby forfeit his or her employment. So it has more to do with the power to appoint or hire and not the fact that a relationship may exist between an employee and an independent contractor with the public entity in itself, which is nepotism. The penalty is forfeiture of office. As city attorney, we are an independent contractor for a part-time legal work for the city and have no supervisory authority or power over anybody's hiring. We have none over their position or duties, and said employee has none over the city attorney's duties or hiring. Furthermore, neither the clerk nor the city attorney have a vote in any of the matters of hiring. Are individual members entitled to second legal opinions? Now, if the question is if anybody wants a private legal opinion, anybody can get one that they want at any time. If someone's asking for one for the city to pay for it when they request it, I presume the answer is no. And I don't know if he keeps asking for one because he doesn't like our answer or doesn't like the outcome of the vote. I don't know if he thinks a second opinion, the vote might be different. But any of you are entitled to seek independent legal opinions on issues, but unless the council approved it, I seriously doubt the city would pay the bill. If there has been a conflict in the past, for any reason, it's dealt with on a case-by-case basis, and usually a referral is made or Mr. Butts reaches out and obtains the information from independent counsel. However, not liking the answer that Mr. Butts or legal counsel provides doesn't mean independent new counsel gets appointed or steps in whenever anyone doesn't like the answer. The city keeps counsel during the meetings and closed sessions when many or even most cities don't even have counsel at their closed sessions, and there's no requirement that they do. Lots of municipalities just talk to legal counsel on issues and do not always have the luxury of asking questions at the meetings. There seems to be a belief that perhaps we as city attorney communicate our opinions to the client, who is most frequently represented through the mayor, John Butts, or the council itself, that somehow we are picking sides in the issues disputed amongst any of you. I think the mayor and John can confirm that our opinions are based on answering the questions in a manner to protect and aid the city. That's why we were appointed. Sometimes we give opinions they probably do not care for either. However, and I hope here that everyone understands that our legal opinion won't change just because who is the majority or the minority of opinions on the council, or due to our personal opinions. I would hope that you would only want an attorney worth a darn that wouldn't give opinions based on what they think their client wants to hear as opposed as to what their client needs to hear. I do respect every council member here personally and as an office holder for their opinions and willingness to serve. There are times I may personally agree or sometimes I may not, and that's not what I'm here for. You might be surprised with who that would be depending upon the issue. But as a professional here with a job, it is not for me to promote my personal opinions by giving legal opinions that fit my agenda. So I want to be clear on that, because that is what would be unethical and a conflict of interest if my personal beliefs were to create my legal advice. So with that, I hope that addresses any concerns you may have about what did or did not happen regarding the hiring of an employee who happens to be married to an attorney who represents the city. If there's any other questions, I can take those.
Yeah, not knowing what Carolyn was going to talk about, I think out of courtesy, David, I'll give you a chance to respond, but if you just want to take a minute to gather your thoughts before you do it. Any other questions from council first? Okay, David, the floor is yours.
So, yeah, I just want to clarify a few things about how this came up. Part of the issue that I had was during one of our sessions, we did not have legal counsel. It seems like from what our legal counsel tells us here, there's no necessity or issue with legality with not having one there. It did seem difficult for myself and maybe a few others here that we weren't able to ask some of those questions, but it doesn't sound like it's anything against the rules that we didn't have that counsel, but it would have been helpful to be able to ask some questions there. Another thing I wanted to address is the suggestion that I was not intending for the mayor, John Butts, or anybody on council to fully hear and fully discuss these concerns is misguided and misunderstood. My goal really was to clarify what I was allowed to say so that I could say it in an open forum, excuse me. And for me, the goal of bringing this up was to be able to discuss it in the light of the public. So I think our legal counsel did a good job of letting us know. Obviously, there's certain things in the private closed session that we can't talk about, so I don't plan to bring any of those up. I would like to formally welcome our new city clerk, Lori Thurman. We are glad to have her on board now, and we're also very glad that Carol gets to head to a well-deserved retirement. The only questions I have otherwise, and I think you partially answered a couple of them. The first one was, under what circumstances do you see that in the future there could be a conflict of interest? I don't know if you mentioned any specifics or if you just mentioned that it wouldn't come up. Could you clarify?
I certainly didn't say it could never come up.
Okay.
I said that we analyze them on a case-by-case basis. So for me to just start coming up with scenarios is not typically how we would assess that issue. There's typically practices in which organizations, boards, municipalities can avoid those. They could happen, honestly, with a multitude of people sitting here at this table today for a variety of reasons. And so when we worry about them, it's more about probability over possibility. And so I don't know if that's answering your question sufficiently, but if you have examples you want to ask me, that's what you need to do rather than ask me to make up scenarios. That would be my request.
Okay. But the answer is there could be potential scenarios.
Sure, for everybody here.
Okay. And the other question, I think you touched on this too, is there a procedure for council members in the future to ask for independent legal counsel provided in this forum when there's a concern for conflict of interest involving the city clerk and her husband, Lance Thurman, or Lance Thurman's legal firm?
So, if a conflict of interest were to arise, I can assure you that my firm is going to probably be the first person to figure it out and say we have an issue and we suggest that we go a different route with this. If you have an issue about a conflict of interest, you feel free to bring it up and we'll assess it at that time. Does that sound fair? Or anyone else here, obviously. I don't think only Mr. Schott could have questions about that, and
I guess the concern that I would have is that the legal firm that the question of conflict is about would be answering the question. Maybe that's the concern?
Well, if there's an issue where we don't agree whether it's a conflict or not, then that's up to the mayor and Mr. Butts and the rest of you to decide what to do about it. But I assure you, we are incredibly cautious because our law licenses and our reputation are quite valuable to us, and so we're not going to mess with that.
Okay.
So.
One other thing that came up, I was just curious how that works, is there were situations where it was suggested if there was a conflict, we would have the deputy city clerk provided. Can you talk about how they are selected and who they are?
I wasn't present for that conversation, and you may be delving into minutes, so that would be a point I'd like to make.
Okay.
Millie currently is the deputy city clerk, and I think that would be a decision by Mr. Butts and the mayor as well, if there needed to be another person handling a particular matter or if our firm stepped out from a matter. But again, we are the ones who are more than willing to be cautious about that if there's ever going to be that appearance or concern.
Okay. Last question.
We will be appointing a deputy in due time, but right now, while we have various employees sort of in a part-time flux, we're not doing it. So I don't know when, but I would say probably by the end of the year, without putting John on the spot as well, but I'd say by the end of the year.
Okay. Last question is just, I think you've made it clear this, but I just want to confirm. Do you foresee that Lance Thurman will continue to provide legal counsel and involvement in the Rolla City legal affairs?
I don't know why he wouldn't, because I explained why there's no conflict of interest per se, and there's no nepotism involved. So I don't know why he wouldn't, but
okay.
I'm not
part of the
sure
question
what
is
you're...
because I guess part of the question was maybe the question came about because I know he's often been at recent meetings, but recently you've been here, so I didn't know if that was a change or if it's just whoever's more available. Kind of
He
thing.
covered a meeting that I couldn't cover last month, so I'm covering 2 this month. I don't know what will happen in December. And I think you're pretty used to us alternating depending upon circumstances. You guys see both of us here. Wouldn't that be accurate? So
Okay.
I wouldn't read anything into that.
Okay. Thanks for answering the questions.
You're very welcome.
Thanks to both of you. That was a good objective discussion, and I think that's the way that matter should be handled. So thank you for that. Next item on the list is COVID, and this is going to be a much more lengthy and detailed conversation than we originally planned last week when we put this agenda. For the benefit of the citizens, there is a requirement that whatever the city council's going to be addressing, it's got to be posted well in advance to the public, and conditions related to COVID have been changing very rapidly, and we've had to make some adjustments as well. So what I'd like to do tonight is a series of things. I've briefed you each council meeting on what I call the local quote-unquote COVID stats. These are obtained weekly as far as the COVID team discusses, which is representatives of the university, the hospital, the county health director, as well as some of our emergency staff, as well as city staff. I'd like to go through those. I'd like then to ask Phelps Health representatives to speak. You know, we've spent a lot of time over the months talking about what do we need to do when. There was many discussions on picking some mile markers or some metrics or some benchmarks, and those have proven to be very elusive. We all are exposed to tremendous amounts of data for every person that shows you a study that says X, there's another study that shows Y. For everyone that tells you COVID is serious, there's another one that says it's nothing but a hoax. And our community, just judging over the months from the calls and the emails that come in to us at City Hall, I can tell you there will ebb and flow depending on the circumstances, but at the end of the day, our community is rather split on this whole issue of taking next steps. So I'm taking liberty to speak for John here for a second, but basically I think at City Hall what we've decided is we know when that time will come, and that time is going to be when our local health professionals put up their hand and say, we think we have a problem. And that has occurred because of the situations here in Rolla. So we have professionals here. We have at least one hospital board member present. There's at least one that is viewing this tonight. So I'm going to then turn it over to them for some comments, and then open the discussion for council as far as some next steps that you want to take. And after you give us some direction on that, which I'm going to presume for a second is going to be looking at an ordinance or revising the one you have with respect to wearing a mask and gatherings and things like that, then City Hall, we are prepared to bring something back to you, and I'll ask you a series of questions for that for some guidance, because time is of the essence, so we have to be very thorough with our decision, but we have a sense of urgency as well. So with that, let me start with the local statistics. These numbers are approximate. They move daily, so use them more for context rather than maybe questioning me whether it's up 10 or off 10 or something like that. So from the health department, the total number of positive test results thus far are sitting at just over 1,400 cases. And that's an increase of almost 150 from as recently as Tuesday. The total number of cases is up 63 from Tuesday and currently numbers 480 cases. Total Phelps County deaths to date, there were 2 this weekend, so it presently sits at 35. I'm going to skip over to Phelps health statistics because we have folks that could address those and give us the latest. Rolla School District was actually doing remarkably well, as is Missouri S&T. Students in the Rolla public school system, we have 27 that have tested for positive at this point. The number of students in quarantine are 463. Some of that is being driven. I won't get into the messiness of it, but an event that happened last week regarding a non-school sanctioned event. The staff that's positive so far is currently at 11. Missouri S&T continues to do an outstanding job, considering there's 8,000 students there. To date, there's 238 positive cases, with a current number sitting at about 50. So those are the rough statistics. Information from the county health director, needless to say, they're overwhelmed. And the practice to date, both locally and nationwide, has been to test, contact trace, and quarantine. And that's only as effective as you can keep up with it, and it's only as effective as people are honest. And there's a lot of less than honest people out there with respect to reporting their results and quarantining and things like that. But the sheer number of cases now is overwhelming the staff, and that testing, contact tracing, quarantine is starting to have a limited payback. And we still sadly say we have people working about in the community that not only have tested for positive COVID, but are also showing so with symptoms. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to defer to Ed Clayton to talk a little bit about the concerns of our health professionals. Ed?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for allowing us to speak to you tonight. At Phelps Health, we've been engaged in the battle against COVID since March. In addition to diagnosing, caring, and treating for those with COVID, one of our responsibilities has been really to educate the community and advocate for preventative measures to keep us all safe. the things you hear about mask wearing, hand hygiene, social distancing. But over the last couple weeks in particular, we've seen a very disturbing trend. Things are changing fast, and the education, we believe, is no longer enough. We believe there is greater action that's now needed based on what we're experiencing at Phelps Health. To quote Herb Kuhn with the Missouri Hospital Association, the wolf is now at the door. Tonight, we have several doctors and members of our Board of Trustees here who are passionate about the current situation of our institution and the potential fallout to the community associated with it. The best way for us to kind of communicate to you what we're seeing on the front lines is to bring up one of our frontline physician leaders and have them talk about their experiences. And as such, I want to introduce Dr. Rochelle Gorell. She's a family medicine physician with Phelps Health. But more importantly, she oversees our COVID screening area. She's the physician that sees the patients that come through that are positive. Additionally, she's the medical director at the Veterans Home at St. James. So again, she has firsthand knowledge of what's going on in our community related to COVID. And so I want to turn the floor over to Dr. Gorell and have her speak to you regarding her experiences.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to let us come in and share our side of the story. Again, I'm Rochelle Gorell, and I do family practice medicine in St. James as my primary location, and also here in Rolla. I've worked with the nurse practitioners up at the COVID shed. I see patients there every Wednesday. Also the medical director of the nursing home, the Veterans Home in St. James. So with these experiences and positions, I feel like I have a firsthand knowledge of COVID-19 and the effects it's had on our community. So let me start with some facts. Our COVID screening shed has been seeing patients not only from Phelps County, but throughout our service area. In the last week, we took care of over 800 patients in 5 days. Just the week prior, it was under 700. Patients are sicker. The majority have known exposure, and the average age of the patient is getting older. Our current positivity rate for the Phelps Health System is 26.5%. Just back in September, it was around 10. And just on my last shift at the shed on this last Wednesday, a third of the patients I saw were positive for COVID, with the oldest one being 85 years old. Each week I say we can't take care of any more patients, but somehow the staff gets it done. With the high community spread, it is getting harder to protect the vulnerable population, which is evident with the cases in our nursing homes. It has been heartbreaking to be able to keep COVID-19 out of the Veterans Home for 6 months and then have it show its eerie head. I've had over 60 cases there, and a third of them have died. Yes, I know you're thinking they were frail, they were in a nursing home, and going to pass of other reasons anyway, but looking at my veterans that did die, more than half of them I did not expect to lose in the next 6 months. They died because they got COVID-19. And if anyone knows the Veterans Home or any nursing home, it was like losing a family member, even if you're a staff that has no blood relation. We are also limited on our COVID-19 testing. It has been a challenge throughout the pandemic to get testing. We were fortunate enough to get rapid COVID testing here recently at our facility, but are not consistently getting our allocations each week. Therefore, we have to decide at the COVID shed and throughout our health system of what kind of testing each patient gets depending on their symptoms, their severity of illness, their known exposure, and other factors. We would love to do rapid COVID accurate testing on each patient so that we can identify them quickly and keep them from spreading this awful virus, but we are not able to do so. Our emergency department is struggling to get patients placed in our hospital as well as at the larger tertiary centers, as there is no room availability. St. Louis, Springfield, and Columbia many times can't accept our critical patients due to being overwhelmed with COVID patients themselves. Patients have waited over 72 hours in our emergency room for their transfer. Phelps Health has over 20 COVID patients in the hospital at a time, and even one weekend reached over 30. Our ICU has been on diversion, which complicates things tremendously. Phelps Health is getting very close to changing operations, which may include delaying elective procedures as we had to back in the lockdown. We, as your medical professionals, are asking for your support to educate and encourage the community to help fight the spread of COVID-19. We are not asking for business shutdowns, but for wearing masks, hand washing, staying home when sick, social distancing, and limiting social gatherings. People aren't picking up the coronavirus by walking through Walmart, grabbing something, and going out, but through funerals, weddings, dances, anywhere people are gathering in large numbers and in groups and not keeping their distance. Every week while I'm at the COVID shed, there is the gathering of the week to where patients have been exposed. Yes, there are random cases of exposure, but that is not the majority. We are asking for your support as the leadership of the community, particularly for a mask mandate and limit of social gatherings, and encourage you to do this quickly, because as mentioned, our urgency is now. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Doctor. Ed, is there anyone else that would like to speak from Phelps Health? Okay. Okay, I do have one question for you, Doctor. You know, one of the things with a mask we hear, and I'm sure there's some validity to it and some not, but regarding the health aspects of a person wearing a mask. So, and I don't know quite how to say this, but is that something that a doctor would give somebody to say, you can't wear the mask because you have some underlying condition that would prevent you wear from a mask? Or is that sort of an excuse or a hoax or whatever?
In my own practice, I rarely give an order that patients should not wear a mask. And primarily it's going to be someone with breathing problems. Other than that, I know there's a lot of patients that call about it, so it really is very limited on who should not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming out today, ma'am. I've heard from individuals in my ward on both sides of this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask some of the questions that, or at least one of the questions that really struck with me. We don't have a cure for it. So the best that we can do is try to mitigate and try to control the number of people, and so the hospital can be able to treat the individuals that come in, correct?
Correct.
So how many, what is the capacity and what are we looking at right now? Is that one of the metrics that we're using right now to determine that now's the time that we need to put these other mandates in place?
We're talking about the capacity of our hospital?
And yeah, how many are we treating right now? What's the capacity? Seems like that would be a good measuring point to say, if we can't stop it, at least we can say right there that, you know, we're not able to give them adequate care for the individuals who are hospitalized.
Yeah.
Because some people can contract it and not have any symptoms and be fine. And so I'm a numbers guy, and so that's what I'm trying to understand about that, ma'am.
Yeah, and that's why it was interesting, just speaking of the veterans home. The coronavirus has no rhyme or reason which person it attacks harder. You know, there's always talk of different strains of the virus and how it affects, but my experience at the veterans home, there was people that are up and around walking, there were the active guy in there and still had the illness. So yes, the best thing is not to get it at all. And regarding the capacity of our hospital, that is definitely our concern now, is because our ICU has been on diversion, meaning that we either have no bed available or we don't have the staff to take care of those patients. And the unfortunate problem is the big hospitals are having the same problem. And we already know that there's hospitals in St. Louis that have already cut back on scheduled elective procedures so that they can make room for other patients to be taken care of. And so it's very disturbing when we can't take care of the heart attack that comes in because we're full of coronavirus patients. And so, and unfortunately, a coronavirus patient, a 48-year-old that otherwise was healthy. So you can't determine it's the 80-year-old or it's the 90-year-old. It is affecting all of them. Just as we get older, it's worse many times.
So just to be clear, when you say you're on diversion, that means if I come into the emergency room and need an ICU, you might have to send me to somewhere else in another state because there's no bed in your hospital or anywhere close for me to go to.
Correct. If we don't have a bed to take care of you, even though it was a situation that we could handle, we have to find a place for you. Okay. And unfortunately, and I don't know if our ER medical director was able to come, he was on shift, but he has talked about patients being in our emergency room for hours And that's not the best place for them. They should already be in the ICU bed. They should be in a bed that can take care of them and not just in an emergency room capacity. So even though you may not come in for coronavirus, but you come in for some other problem that needs that kind of attention, we may not be able to take care of you here.
So I could not die of coronavirus, but because of coronavirus.
From delay of care, yes.
So the emergency room is one of the criteria that we're looking at for, capacity of the hospital. Am I understanding that correctly?
Both. We look at both, all of our beds. I mean, we have certain wings that we've dedicated to coronavirus patients because of the isolation. But we also look at how long people wait. Unfortunately, we've even heard of emergency room patients that may not be critical waiting in the waiting room and unable to be seen too. And that was our intention of why we opened the COVID screening shed to begin with, to try to take off some of that capacity from the emergency room.
Mister, I'm a numbers guy too, and I was always looking for a number, and I've asked Ed numerous times, what's the number? Is it 20? Is it 30? Is it 15? And after he politely worked with me on it, what I've come to the conclusion is it's not a specific number. It's a moving target depending on so many factors. The number of surgeries, the number of heart attacks that day, that week, whatever. One of the things that they have not mentioned is staff. I don't care where you are today, that staff is working long and hard, and there's no bench. When those folks put 16-hour days in and they're damn ass tired, there's no bullpen to go to. So when you factor all of that stuff in, and again, I was hoping there would just be a number, but it's not. It's much more complicated than that.
So when we move away from numbers, we're using to subjectivity and how a person may feel about the issue. I know that's going to be a balance in almost everything you do, but okay.
It is. I think and again, maybe I'm simplifying it, but I look to them and say, they're smart people, they're reasonable people, they wouldn't cry wolf needlessly.
Yes.
When they put their hand up, it's time to listen. And to my libertarian friends, I'm sorry, sometimes we have to put our ideology on temporary hold, but it's time. It's time, folks.
You're right. Even our staff that's working, we a lot of times could pull from agency staff, those that move around and that kind of stuff. They're low on numbers too because they're pulled to all the other hospitals too.
Yep.
So.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, sir?
Not only your frontline medical staff too, it's your housekeeping and dietary and laundry facility people that may come down with COVID, and they can't work. And so it's hard to take care of patients if you can't provide clean sheets or food, stuff.
Right, and there's a certain amount of turnover of rooms because of the coronavirus that we have to do certain cleaning operations. So if your housekeeping staff is not available, it really cuts it down. You're correct.
The capacity goes down.
Yes. Thank you.
I just wanted to speak as well. I'm Eric Abishon. I'm the Chief Medical Staff at Phelps Health. And just to add to what Dr. Grell said and some of the things you all brought up, you're right, there is not a cure for COVID. And we talk about staffing and we talk about bed capacity. Part of how we've made some progress in taking care of these patients is that we've learned how to support these patients and get them through it. But that means lots and lots of resources going into that. Treatments, patients are staying in the hospital longer. This is not an overnight stay. I mean, we've got people who are otherwise healthy that are staying for long periods of time, and we're doing what we can to move people and keep people in the hospital as best we can. We've got patients who are much sicker that are outside of our ICU. So pushing our other floors and all of our other staff members to their limits to be able to accommodate this. And so whenever it comes to our nursing staff, our non-clinical staff, they're putting all that they have into this. And then whenever, we need to encourage the community to recognize that these are the people that they are around every day. These are the people they go to school with. These are the people they go to church with. Decisions that everybody makes has an impact on everybody. And since Phelps Health is such a big employer of the community, I mean, this is where we all are right now. And so we need to do what we can to help those people who are our peers. But I want to thank you all for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, medical related, by council? Okay, so Where we were last week when we prepared all of this was to set up a task force to address, the easy thing to do is to put a mask mandate in place. The more difficult part of the story is finding out how to implement it and how to enforce it. Because without enforcement, there is no ordinance or nothing of any substance. Doctor mentioned it, but this was a subject that the health director has been telling us weekly for months now, and that is the community gathering. So passing somebody in the aisle at Walmart, and I'm not a physician, so just keep that in mind, but passing somebody briefly in Walmart is not nearly the same risk as sitting next to somebody in a bar, having it at a party, at these other civic events. And public events. So one of the things that we're going to have to do with a mask ordinance, if that's the way we go, is to combine that with, again, the capacity and the gatherings, both civic and private. So we had formed a task force that included 3 of you to drill down onto some of these details. It included someone representing the county health department, and 2 from the business sector, which was the chairman of the chamber board and the, I guess, president or the spokesperson for the Downtown Business Association. Because at the end of the day, this mask ordinance is going to have to be, we're going to have a partnership in the business community. Unless you want the police driving around town and just giving tickets, we're going to have buy-in and support from the business community, so we felt that they needed to be at a table. The timetable for all of that was to coincide with our regular meetings, and we wanted to put 1 public hearing in there because, again, there's some diversity of opinion in the community, and we wanted a very public method for which to let everybody speak their mind. As of today, things have changed very fast. So I think that structure is appropriate, but I don't think that timeline is at all appropriate at this point in time. So what John and I are recommending is we still go the route of a task force. What we'd like to do in the next couple of days is find something that is built upon what you tell us tonight, the direction you would like us to head, and come back on Monday to have a special council meeting and a public hearing. And at that point, that's going to be 1 meeting, 1 subject to evaluate that. We would like to hold it in a very large forum, so that, or venue, so that people, the public is welcome to come and voice their opinions all which way and sideways. So let me stop there, and before I get into what we would like you to tell us tonight is, are there any questions with what I just said? Okay. I was hoping for a magic answer here, but I guess not. Okay, so here's what we would it helpful. We don't have time, so we're going to have to be very efficient with what we put together, because I think what we want to come to you is something that is reasonably close to what you will support and what the community will support. So the first issue is, do you want us to prepare, and we will probably use some models. There are several out there, Springfield and others, who have been around for a few months. They've gone through a few iterations, so there's no sense reinventing the wheel. So the first question we have is, do you want us to move forward to put something in front of you in a few days with respect to what I'm going to call a mask ordinance and something to address gatherings as well?
Yes.
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 Okay. Second question, are you okay with the methodology being this task force and having a special meeting on Monday?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Quick question there.
Yes.
So the meeting where we would make a final decision would be Monday. I'd heard talk of earlier than that, but that's what we're looking about a week out?
We were shooting for Thursday. 2 things with Thursday. We're not sure that we could get through the details quick enough. Plus, the venue that we had in mind that was large and had video capability so the community could participate is not available Thursday. And notice. So Wednesday is too quick, the weekend is not really great, so that's how we settled on a Monday. But the idea is to deliver everything on Monday, have the public hearing, have you debate it, and presumably take some action one way or another. The other thing we really need to address, and this is the sticky wicket, one of the sticky wickets, is enforcement. And that's a challenge. So if you go the one route of just having guidelines, which is what we basically have now, you know, it's like anything else in life, you get what you pay for. If we want to go with enforcement, there are various models and methods to that. I don't think what we envision is sending the police knocking on doors and barging in places and giving tickets. Most of the communities rely on the businesses to either be part of the enforcement or part of the compliance. I think what we at City Hall would prefer is to have the businesses as partners and not enforcing agents. So what does that mean as an example? An example may be the requirement is for the business to post a notice that says if you're going to come into, and we use the term business well beyond just merchant transactions, but have a sign posted and you're expected to wear a mask and socially distance within the facility. For those that choose not to, we are suggesting is the business owner, the employee, the manager, what have you, speak to the customer or to the patron and politely have a discussion regarding not only what the city ordinance is, but sort of the common sense approach of what we're asking. Whether or not somebody will comply, whether or not every business will want to have that conversation, we don't know. But at least what we're counting on is if we have the businesses at the table, we can find some way that they could all find a way to help us comply with that. But at the end of the day, we are going to have the enforcement provisions, which means the police and the police giving tickets. And at least at this point, what we're suggesting, and I do not have details, so don't hold me to details, but conceptually, they would look to basically issue misdemeanor citations to repeat violators or blatant violators. Somebody that just wants to say, stick it, I'm not going to do this, or somebody that's a repeat violator. And again, these are concepts. Don't walk out of here, and I don't do Facebook, but I can imagine Facebook tomorrow be the mayor said this, the mayor said that. What I'm just giving as an example, and I think that's what we have to do in the next couple of days with certain council people, health professionals, and businesses, to work through those little nuances, because the devil's in the details as always. So if you're okay with that, I will go into the next one, and that's the gathering. That's the other elephant in the room. What the health department will tell us. Big weddings, big funerals, dances, Halloween parties, those are killing us, folks. Those are absolutely killing us, and that's going to have to be addressed. So I think the committee's going to have to work with that to some degree. So I'm going to stop there and do a gut check here and get your reaction.
So, Mayor, I don't know about anybody else, but just having these 2 and 3 people stand up here and go through what they went through tonight was very powerful. And I think that God knows they've got enough work to do anyway, but if those voices were able to be out in the community a little bit louder perhaps, or more prevalent, I think that would be very helpful for people who don't understand what the scope of this truly is. So again, it's hard to say those folks ought to work harder and do more, but truly hearing from the people who are actually dealing with this frontline every day, it makes much more impact than just reading it in the Rolla Daily News or on Facebook or somewhere else. So I would suggest that whatever we do, if that could happen, that would make a powerful incentive for people to comply.
Yep. The other thing that's changed, early on, one of the challenges, and I do think in retrospect, the actions that the city took were premature. I mean, we got into this essential business model, and we didn't have any cases. Now, maybe we were too premature then, maybe we're too late, I don't know, that's fair criticism. But there is one other thing today, and that is, I would venture to think that most everyone in this room now knows people that have gotten COVID. And yes, we know some people that just got the sniffles, and yes, we know people that are damn sick. And once we start seeing it to the people that we know and love, that to me is a game changer as well. So again, I do think it's time. John?
Yeah, Lou, I think there might be a reaction in the community when we say mask mandate, or people hear the term mask mandate. People have their own vision of what that means. Can you give us an idea of what you're thinking?
Well, if you look at the Springfield and West Plains model, it basically, they're gonna require a mask, not necessarily when you're walking down the street, nobody's around you, but when you're certain in a facility, as well as the social distancing. So the mask really always goes hand in hand with the social distancing, which then implies capacity limits on buildings. And again, some of the challenges that we face is that Walmart is a big building, and an allowable capacity in Walmart, don't quote me on the number, but it's 400 or 500 people at one point in time. But yet, in a small business downtown, that same percentage could be a little more challenging. So we're going to have to work through that a little bit. But generally, the mask ordinances that we've seen say you need to wear a mask and socially distance when you're at least indoors. Now, there's some other areas in those ordinances. John, help me with, Springfield uses the term high risk or high sensitive. What was the term they used?
Yeah, I've got that ordinance.
Yes, enhanced risk activities. Yes, thank you.
They do a great job of describing it in there. So, I mean, we're just got to follow up at Springfield and get some distinction on that.
Yeah, and they consider enhanced risk activities to be the gatherings, the civic gatherings, the church gatherings, the weddings, the funerals, and those sorts of things. I've spoken to some business people in Springfield. I said, how is implementing this mask ordinance? Give me an answer from your perspective as a business owner, and then tell me about you and your wife when you go out and about town. And generally, he said, when you go into businesses in Springfield without a mask, somebody, an employee will say, would you please put the mask on? I have to comply with the ordinance. It's maybe good common sense. And again, you're relying on the person saying those words, doing it appropriately, and you're assuming that the other person is reasonable as well. But the feedback that we're getting from merchants in Springfield is that generally speaking, people will pick up the mask and put it on, and they're probably frowning and grumbling and groaning under that mask, but nonetheless, they're putting the mask on. So, Carolyn?
I've had several, and I think all of us have phone calls over this, and on my end, the majority of them have been, they do not want a mask mandate, period. Now, most of these people are saying they wear a mask, but they don't like being told what to do. And I know that's for the discussion later. But the issue is going to be, like you said, how do you enforce? How do you really make that? Because there's going to be some of the flouters going to say, you're not going to tell me what to do anyway. I don't care what you say or what you mandate.
Carolyn, I don't like to be told either. But sometimes common sense has to prevail. And it's time. It's time. Rachel?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time today talking with a lot of people on the phone. I read over 5 different mask mandate or variant ordinances or orders. I included the ones from Missouri, Columbia, and Ozark in my review. I also talked with at least one local business owner in depth. I also talked with some of my colleagues at S&T in the biology department to learn a little bit more. Following up on kind of what you said, and I'm going to try not to make a big speech because I don't want to go on too long, but definitely what I heard was a lot of what you've already said, right? That it's, because COVID spreads in these sort of restricted spaces without ventilation over a period of time, right? The most important things are to be separate from others, and if you can't be separate, then you wear a mask, then you can pay attention to the hygiene and stuff like that. When I was asking them about things like the potential capacity limits, gathering limits, stuff like that, the kind of thought was, well, it really depends on the kind of business, right? In the way that the Springfield ordinance talks about these sorts of, going back to my notes here, the enhanced risk activities like entertainment, gyms, bars, breweries, restaurants, right? Those are places where people stay for a while. They might stay for an hour, if they're taking off their mask to eat, they may not put it back on when they're done chewing, right? You're going to leave it off for a little bit. And those are the real opportunities, it seems like, especially because as I saw in a study published this year, super spreader events also account for a large majority of infections versus these day-to-days. So I'm comfortable with the idea that it very well may be that we, even though this is not, got a lot of notes here. In terms of occupancy limits, I don't know if we might want to target most effectively what those occupancy limits might be, both in terms of the size of the business, right? Like somebody going, into, Three Sisters downtown or going into one of our shops downtown may only stay for 15, 20 minutes. And as long as they're wearing a mask and trying to distance, they'll be fine. But some of these other things like gyms, for instance, right, where people are breathing heavily, where in many cases, a lot of the ordinances point out CDC doesn't recommend that you wear a mask when you're engaged in sporting activity. So those might require more things like taking temperatures when they come in. So we might have to, I think, customize what those occupancy limits might look like. Because I understand the desire to want to say something like, either our layered ordinance requirements in April where we kind of broke it up based on the size, or just like, 50% off the top. I just want to make sure we're being more targeting any occupancy limits to sort of what's there. In terms of gathering restrictions, I think, in terms of public, again, when you're thinking about if it's 10 people, that might be 2 families. And depending on how many people those families are going to see, if the kids are going to school, right, you're exponentially sort of increasing the number of contacts, right? That, if I went up to see, my sister and her children, right, my brother-in-law who goes to work every day, I'm exposed to all of the 20 people that he might encounter in that day, and as well as anyone the other children might encounter. So, in thinking of that, it's almost like I don't know if we'd want to limit based on household numbers in terms of gatherings coming together, because people within a household, right, they're all sort of exposed to each other. So if one person gets sick in that household, it'll probably be everyone else. Or if we'd want to go with some kind of number structure or some sort of structured thing, like, if it's 10 or fewer, that's one thing. If you want to be 10 to 20, like we recommend, you space out or something like that. I may not be the most constructive or vague, because I'm also not sure sort of what we can do in terms of public gathering restrictions or private gathering restrictions. I assume we could do more in terms of public space gathering restrictions than we could
in terms of private. And as to enforcement, I do know and understand the concerns that businesses might have about having individual workers absorbing the bulk of enforcement. You know, there are in some places places where there's been issues with that, in West Plains, for instance, where workers have been harassed. So I agree with you. I think the more that we can get community buy-in and the more we can get sort of the buy-in of the businesses, hopefully we can all sort of support each other to get through this. But, you know, I noticed in a lot of the ordinances, they're sort of both individual and business mandates. And, you know, I agree with the West Plains ordinance that I think we definitely want to start with education, opportunities for voluntary noncompliance, warning, and then, again, as you said, for the kind of most intractable, then maybe you move to the fines. But I'm pretty comfortable. A lot of them went with the $100 maximum fine.
Yeah, Rachel, we've been there with the educate and the warnings, and I think you have to presume that anybody that wants to wear a mask today is wearing it. So the people not wearing a mask don't want to wear it, and so I think education has played its way out. So that's why I think it's going to be a little higher. I think your observation on the size of the building means a lot. What works at Walmart, not necessarily going to work in a merchant downtown. It's the same thing with bars, standalone bars and bars within restaurants. You know, some restaurants have enough room that you can move out tables, but let's be honest, folks, people sitting elbow to elbow in a bar drinking beer, it's going to spread. So one of the things you might want to look at is separate what happens at the bar, meaning the physical structure, as opposed to the rest of the restaurant, for instance. So those are the things that I think that you have to think about. David?
I have a couple things. I know we've talked a bit about businesses, and a lot of people are going out and doing...
Oh, can I just say one other thing? One last point, as far as the home. I don't think it's our intention to go in the home or look under the sheets.
I don't.
So I think we're just talking about non-home gatherings.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know how to say that.
I don't want to go home.
So to speak.
It's like nobody else does that.
So while there's been a lot of focus and talk about the masks, I do want to highlight, and I think a number of you have also mentioned it, we got talking about bars and businesses, but I want to highlight the fact that there's lots of other types of events that don't take place, like the mayor said, weddings, funerals, church gatherings in general. And I just want to highlight this because I'm not sure everybody listening here or at home is aware, but we made national news recently in Rolla with the title of this article, "Parents Tried to Cover Up a Super Spreader Dance, Disaster Ensued. A massive unmasked homecoming party at a steakhouse in Missouri included a deliberate campaign to hide from pesky health officials and contact tracers." So I just wanted to highlight this in the sense that if these types of events, which I think some of our health experts mentioned earlier, they're seeing that. They're seeing at the COVID shed, people come in, and a whole lot of them that have been to an event like this. And so I think that we do need to, besides looking at masks, be thinking about how we work on those. Work on making gatherings like that something that don't happen. And so the other thing I want to address is, because I do think there might be some speakers tonight and also next Monday, but I just want to bring it up now because it's something I've been thinking about. The mayor mentioned it, kind of the idea that many of us feel about our freedoms and liberty and how that fits into this, because I think that is a big concern. A lot of the folks that called me, that I felt like I got, the majority of folks that called me or contacted me were in favor of the masks to protect their protect their other community members. But the ones that were against the mask ordinance seemed to have kind of a perspective of freedom and individual liberty. And so it just got me thinking. I'm trying to really see all sides. And so I just want to read this statement because I think it's one way I thought about what we're asking folks to do. So I pose a number of questions in this statement. Has your freedom been taken away by the fact that you're required to wear a seatbelt? Our society has decided that seatbelts save lives and that it is also unfair to medical staff and first responders to put their lives at greater risk because we didn't wear our seatbelt and now we're taking up greater resources from the medical staff that are trying to save our lives. Helicopter flights, ICU beds, etc. Has your freedom been taken away from you by the fact that you have to stop at stop signs in town? Or do you believe that it is your individual choice as to whether you should have the liberty to obey those signs or not? Exercising your freedom and ignoring the stop signs could cost you or another driver their life. Are your liberties being curtailed by the fact that you aren't allowed to drink and drive? Are you upset that the government doesn't allow everyone to do this and instead puts limits on your freedom? Or are you glad that there is a law against drinking and driving so that an impaired driver won't hurt or kill you or another family member? Are there any hunters out there? Do hunters that want to fully exercise their freedoms and liberties believe that they should be able to hunt any and all animals on every day of the year? Or do most hunters agree that there is a value in having specific times of the year that will be considered open season for different wildlife, based on rules put in place by the Missouri Department of Conservation? In each one of these scenarios, one person stating that their freedoms are being impinged on by not being allowed to partake in these reckless activities are actually negatively affecting the majority of other people in society by not recognizing the common good and safety of their fellow citizens. To be clear, we do not live in Nazi Germany, as suggested by previous speakers who have come into the chamber to speak, council chambers to speak. We live in the United States of America in the small town of Rolla, Missouri, where we have a science-based university and a top-tier hospital, where we respect our health workers, first responders, and fellow citizens. Our health workers are pleading with us to take the necessary precautions to keep them from being overstressed and overwhelmed and keeping them from having to turn COVID and other ICU patients away at the door. Does taking action to help prevent this disaster mean that we don't respect freedom or liberty? As I stated before, unless you feel that you should be able to drink and drive, ignore stop signs, and shoot wildlife whenever and wherever you want, then it certainly seems reasonable that taking whatever measures can help us best protect our health workers and fellow citizens is warranted, and not doing so would be an extreme lack of care and compassion to those around us. We don't want to shut down our city. That could cause further damage to our local economy and businesses that are already struggling to survive. My number one concern, as I have said before in previous meetings, is for our first responders and medical staff in town. They are asking that we take action to help them from being overwhelmed. Shouldn't we err on the side of caution out of respect for the doctors, nurses, and first responders who are on the front lines that are asking us to take action? And so that's a little bit of my thoughts in terms of freedoms and liberty and how there are other times in our society and in our daily lives that we forget that we are actually having to give up a little of our liberties and freedoms for the common good of everyone.
Thank you. Deanne?
Just going off of what Dave said, with our freedoms come responsibilities, and we're not just responsible for ourselves in this case, we are responsible for each other in our community. We know what we need to do. Historically, we know what we need to do because this exact situation happened 1 century ago. We know what we need to do. So with our freedoms comes our responsibility, and one of the freedoms we need to talk about is the freedom from COVID. I would like to have that freedom from COVID. My partner would, our families would, students would. I think everyone up here would like the freedom from COVID. And one of the ways we can do that, and we know it, our medical experts here have told us, we need to wear a mask. So when you're talking about the freedom, please understand that you are talking about the freedom to infect people, and we are talking about the freedom from infection. And we need to be clear on that. You don't have the freedom to infect other people.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Lister?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A couple of things. I think it's only 3 things, and I know we're pressing for time. I disagree with you about the point that you said about education has played out. I think that we continue to educate. I think that we continue to inform people and have that open.
I didn't mean we stop. All I'm saying is education has got us here, but education alone is not going to take us across the goal line.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. And so I think it's a 3-part. I like we're discussing the ordinance and gathering, and I like the enforcement. But I think the other thing we need to do is public education, not just lecture type discussion, ongoing communication where we can continue to have both sides of the issue being able to voice their opinion. The only way we can work towards this together is if both sides can come out and voice their concern small business, large business, people who are extremely against it, or whatever the case may be. So I think that that's something that's just not a one-shot out, but we have to continue that dialogue going along. I know that I heard from constituents in my community, and I agree with my fellow councilman that majority of the people I heard from are against the ordinance. And so, and I did get reprimanded from a couple of my from people in my ward telling me that I did not represent them because I had not talked to them. So the people in Ward 3, you're right. I've seen, I think 3/5 of my ward, I have not talked to you personally, and I will be going out this week in the afternoons and trying to knock door to door and talk to you because you're right. I represent you, and I need to get your input. And so I will be doing, especially on a critical issue like this, going out and knocking on doors and talking to you and getting some input about that as well. So I wanted to make sure I addressed that to you. You're right, and thank you for calling me on that. If I did it wrong, I did it wrong, and I'll do better. Let's see. The last thing was we have heard. I appreciate what we've heard from the medical profession. I would have liked to heard from maybe some of the medical profession on the opposite side of this as well. That's just the way that I look. I think there's got to be some people who disagree with the mandates who are in the medical profession. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would have liked to hear that balance. And the other thing is that I would have liked to heard discussion presented, from the Small Business Association. When we said that the medical thing, I would have liked to hear from them as well. When we present that. That's my input. It may not be appropriate on this forum.
But Lister, you are. You're
Okay.
going to hear from all of those people by virtue of, two of them will be on the task force, but more importantly, at the public hearing. So the physicians that are not in favor of masks are welcome to come. My guess is that some of the physicians that we have here will probably want to speak again. My guess, one of the reasons we'll have a big venue is because there'll be a lot of business people that want to speak. So all of that will occur before you make your decision.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir.
So, Ann, did you have your hand up?
No.
No? Oh, Terry, I'm sorry.
I also got 5 out of 7 people that said not to have the mandate, that called me or texted me about it. And I think in education, an important part of education, if we're going to mandate masks, we need to educate people about the proper way to wear them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, what is the good of wearing a mask if you don't wear it properly? So that might be an important thing if we move toward the mandate, that we also have something out there to educate people about mask wearing, as well as trying to take care of their own immune system and not just rely on masks, social distancing, and washing your hands. That's all I got.
Rachel, just since I want, okay, go ahead. I want to give Christine, because I don't want to make sure we don't forget. Christine, would you like to say anything?
First of all, thank you to all the people who sent in emails to myself and the entire council. I have read them all and thought carefully about things that were brought up and said. In relationship, I think, to one of the things that the mayor brought up about, how people have said, well, there are stores that have mask requirements and so on. Yes, there are, and I've been in them very rarely because they're not able to enforce. And I think that we owe it to all our citizens to make sure that we're providing them with a safe city. We spent a lot of time talking about the police department and how we want the city to be safe for our citizens. This is not much different. We want the city to be safe and healthy for our citizens. And the last thing I want to say is I also agree that the medical professionals that we got to hear from this evening, first of all, thank you for what you're doing. what you had to say was very, very impactful.
Thank you, Christine. Rachel?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of agree with Terry and second. One thing that I noticed that I thought was really helpful on a lot of city websites was they had things like FAQs, like, what's a mask? What does the ordinance define as a mask covering? When can people wear it, right? Along with educational material about how to wear a mask properly. And I think those are all great things to have and offer.
Some people still ask, do you wear the color side out or in? I mean, that's pretty basic, so.
One of the communities up by the lake, if you notice the merchants, they all have the exact same sign on the front door. And I asked someone about that. In that case, one of the Chamber of Commerce's decided to get behind it, and they developed the sign that says you need to wear a mask, and actually then distribute it to each business so that there was some consistency in the message as well, as opposed to this person got something on a 5x9 poster or card and so on and so forth. So all of that, but first things first, you're going to have to go down a path of an ordinance to address some of this stuff. Terry?
I think one of the best places I've been in that requires the mask is Goodwill. They are right at the door. They tell you exactly what type of mask is okay. You can't come in with some funky, homemade thing, or I can't remember what else they said, but it has to be a paper mask or a cloth mask. And they're very good about it and extremely effective and nice. I mean, they handle it very well, and they do not have a huge staff, but they do have a pretty good sized store.
Yep.
So maybe even looking at some people that are pretty effective with it. PetSmart as well. I mean, there's several places that are very effective. There are some that are completely ineffective.
Yep.
Good point. That might be valuable.
So before we move on to some citizen comments, is there some consensus of moving forward as suggested?
Yes.
Are we going to include the further communication in public?
Do what?
Public education, are we going to move forward with that as part of, because we had 2-3 things on there. I just want to know if that's going to be one of the things that's going to be included in the task force.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do think that 80% of your time should be figuring out the ordinance.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to send us some drafts, Lou, we can look at, or are we going to just come in blind? Or do you know yet?
I think if we go with the route of the task force, we'll roll up our sleeves with them, and then the task force will be making the recommendation to you. So if there's enough time, and I would hope there would be, that we could at least get it to you before the weekend, so you have the weekend to look at it. Yes.
Oh, and one last thing, just because it didn't come up already. One thing I really liked about the West Plains ordinance, if people want to pick it up, I know that it was the White House COVID task force that had the language about, at the top, about if the 14-day positivity rate falls below 5% for 7 consecutive days, the mayor can suspend enforcement. I mean, we are having exponential community growth, so I don't think that's likely to happen.
I don't want that.
But
I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Because frankly speaking, I've spent enough time talking to the professionals. I don't believe in a specific number. I think the math associated with positivity rates can be skewed depending on how you could do your sample sizes. The number of cases in and of itself is a leading indicator, but I think we'll know when the day comes to increase the restrictions or the day comes to relax the restrictions. I think it'll be obvious to all of us.
All right.
I think the health community will let us know that as well. But I'm hesitant to just pick a number out of the sky. I really am. And I'm a numbers person, but in this case, I don't think so. Ann?
I just want to say, I think that this conversation tonight with everybody here and open discussion will go a long way to help some of our mental health issues too that people are struggling with so much this day. Anxiety. So many folks have lost wages, lost loved ones, sick people are sick or have issues that they're going to be with them for many, many months to come because of COVID. And I just hope that maybe the direction, we can get information out and, our local governments can get in one voice. From the top of the nation down, we've had inconsistent, sometimes incorrect information that can only make people crazy. And I think if, talking honestly and bringing in these other partners is going to do a great deal, I think, to help maybe calm some of the waters here, I would hope.
Yeah, one of the other things I should have mentioned is that as we look at our ordinance, on our conference call today with the entities, we talked about MS&T and the school system. Those two bodies have boards, and they have state requirements, and there's a whole lot more control that they have over their populace, if you will. So the thought was we would probably come back to you and in both of those cases defer to their management structure on how they want to implement it, as opposed to forcing the city ordinance on both of those. And quite frankly, both of them are doing a pretty damn good job, so I don't think we want a fool with success. Deanne?
For the meeting we're having next Monday, since it will be in a larger venue, how are we making sure that people are still spaced out? Are we having people come speak one at a time?
If it's the venue that we're thinking of, and we don't have it yet, but we would have assigned seating or marked off seating, whatever, and probably have the city council on a stage, if you will, and then have people be able to come up and use the microphone and all that. But again, the venue has not been secured yet, but I think that's how we would envision.
And will people still have access to Zoom if they're not comfortable coming physically to speak?
I think so. We want video at least so people could watch it. How interactive we can make it, I don't know the answer to that, because that's going to depend on the video.
Well, anybody in Ward 6, if you're not comfortable coming and you don't have access to Zoom and you would like me to read out what you have to say, I am willing to do that.
Yes, by all means. By all means. Okay, so that was a very good discussion, probably better than most of the discussions we had on this particular topic, so thank you very much, and thank you very much to our healthcare providers for coming. One last item, and it's the proclamation for Small Business Saturday. And, boy, we talked about the small business people in Rolla, but they have it tough. They have it tough at all times. Collectively, we look at small business, they are our largest employer. They are the ones that employ part-time and full-time. They're the ones that, essentially train our 16 and 17-year-olds for work skills for the rest of their life. When somebody wants a donation, T-shirts for a soccer team or any charity whatsoever, look, it's always the small business people that are writing the checks. And these small business people are also the ones that are our civic leaders. And COVID has really put just one more big hurdle in front of them. So this particular year, I think we want to be very, very mindful of small business. So with that, I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas Small Business Saturday is a nationwide campaign to cultivate business for small merchants on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Small Business Saturday will stimulate economic growth for merchants in our community. And whereas according to United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 28.8 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of all businesses with employees in the United States, and they're responsible for 63% of net new jobs created over the past 20 years. Whereas small business employs 48% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, and small business forms the backbone of our local economy, generating jobs and improving the quality of life for our citizens. Whereas Rolla, Missouri has issued a total of 1,272 business licenses in 2020, including 744 businesses physically located inside the city limits. These businesses provide a reported 1,800 private sector jobs. The City of Rolla supports the efforts of local small businesses and recognizes the critical role that they play in our community. Now, therefore, I, Louis Magnitz IV, Mayor of the City of Rolla, proclaim Saturday, November 28th as Small Business Saturday. So please, support our local merchants. Yes, it's easy to buy off of Amazon, but we need to support the people, and they need our help the most now. But don't hesitate to remind them about the mask. So with that, we're going to move to citizen communication. We have a couple of people that have made a reservation, if you will. We have a young gentleman from Missouri S&T, and we have 3 young ladies that are going to participate with Zoom. We should have enough time. Council has another issue to discuss in closed session. So if there's people in the community or people present that want to speak, yes, I do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes in the essence of time. And do keep in mind that on hopefully Monday, there'll be a much bigger forum with much more time for which to have comments as well. So if you don't get to speak today because I cut you off, I'll circle back on Monday. So with that, we have a gentleman from Missouri S&T.
Hello, everybody. My name is Justin Umbefor. Thank you for allowing me to take up a little bit of your time. I'm going to put some flyers right here, so let you guys look at it. I printed out enough so you guys can pass around. But so as you said, I'm from Missouri S&T. I am representing myself and 3 other colleagues: Jake Brooks, Nick Masella, and Riley McFarland. We created a flyer discussing COVID-19 misconceptions. Being that we're from Missouri S&T, we believe in the science and we believe in the numbers. So that's what those misconceptions are based on. They're based off on purely science. On the back is the references. Those are references that are proven to be reviewed and that they are good sites. So those are the 4 common misconceptions. The biggest thing, the reason why we want to talk about the misconceptions is because that, going back to you wanted to talk about education.
Excuse me, can I interrupt you 1 second?
Go ahead.
Is it possible to put this on the overhead so the citizens could see it? Look at that, Lister. You wanted education. We delivered in 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
My God.
So regarding COVID-19, because, since it started in December, the biggest term that you heard the most is fluid. The information has been fluid, ever-changing. So with that rush for new information, there's been also a niche for false information, misconceptions. And this could be proven to be dangerous as far as trying to limit the spread of COVID-19. At S&T, like you said, we're a science-based school. Since we came back in the summer, they've had a mask mandate. You can't go anywhere on campus without a mask. I also work at the rec center there. You got a weight room. They're limiting the capacity to 50. We got temperature checks at both doors if you were to come into the building. Also, you got to sign in. You got to have an app that is screening, saying that you don't have any of the symptoms, you're not displaying any of this. It's been very effective, and that goes to show why we have right now our case percentage is less than 1%. We have 61 active cases with 9,000 students. So that is also another example to show everybody that mask wearing can be proven to be effective in limiting the spread. Also, to go back to the point, I heard someone bring up that they don't want to wear a mask because they don't like being told what to do. But when you kind of flip that and you look at it with a different perspective, those who aren't wearing a mask or those who are getting COVID, if they're not limiting their chance of getting COVID by not wearing a mask, not social distancing, doing these big gatherings, when they got to get treatment from the hospitals, these healthcare providers, they're telling them, now you take care of me.
That's right.
I didn't do everything that I could do to help you out, but now I want you to take care of me. So it just kind of shows like we all got to have this thing of empathy, sympathy. We need to look out for each other, and that's definitely a big issue. As far as how that goes, Rolla, you guys are definitely in an advantageous position because I come from Wichita, Kansas. Since we broke up from school over St. Pat's break, so last March, I went home. I worked at the local hospital. I was a CNA and also I also helped staffing, so distributing staff that go to we had 3 main hospitals. And with COVID-19, I saw many hospitals and many of these units, as they were talking about earlier, they had to send patients out and replace those with COVID units. So like you have a stroke unit. They can't take stroke patients anymore because now they have to fill these rooms, these negative pressure rooms with COVID patients. So it's overall just and that's happened to 3 different units as of today, and they're running out of ICU beds, and a lot of those patients are coming from rural areas like this. So it's also just, we got to take into account, we got to do our best. Yes, it's not fun, and we can't like relax either because since we've lived with COVID for a longer time than we want, it's easy just to relax and like, oh, okay, it's COVID, we can live with it. No, we don't have to think that way. We can take preventative measures and be positive and have a great impact. And then to go with that, I haven't heard anyone talk about either. We're coming up on Thanksgiving. We're coming up on Christmas. Those are 2 very big travel events. So taking into account this mask wearing, stuff like that, if people aren't doing what they need to do, then it's just going to get worse in the town.
Justin, one more minute.
Okay. I guess statistics I'll leave you here with. So those who are of age 1 to 29 make up 30% of the cases, but less than 1% of the deaths, less than 2% of hospitalizations. While those who are senior citizens make up only 15% of the cases, but 80% of the deaths. So that's crazy, right? And you think about it like this: kids at S&T, we're likely to get COVID. We're less likely to be affected of it immediately. There's also studies showing that you could have health effects down the line. But then those who are in the community, why aren't we wearing masks when you guys are at the greatest risk to have the worst conditions and be affected, your lives be affected immediately, and your loved ones? So I just want to leave you guys with that. Think about that. This is also something that hopefully you guys could give to those businesses to help educate or release through your social media platforms, because I think it would be beneficial. But thank you for your time, and I hope we move forward.
Nice job, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, S&T, for your leadership.
Next, we have Tara. Are you on? Give us a chance to switch the video first.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I've really enjoyed hearing everyone share very important information, and I'm glad the healthcare community and professionals had a chance to speak with us, because we've had a very large disconnect, I think, going on between what they're telling us and then what people are actually doing. So as we know, during the spring lockdown, Rolla was strong. Rolla strong was even our motto. We created mutual aid groups. Stores offered special shopping options to seniors. We cheered restaurant workers and grocery clerks as essential employees. And we cheered hospital staff as heroes. And because of that lockdown, I and others believe we survived the first wave. But as the S&T student just mentioned, COVID fatigue set in. And as we know, COVID didn't, miraculously disappear, as we were told from top-down leadership. So I'm so happy now that we're having some grassroots leadership to communicate and to take action in Rolla. A community is only as strong as its most vulnerable. our children and everyone are vulnerable as long as Rolla isn't enforcing a mask mandate and ending large public gatherings. November 13th, the Phelps-Maurice County Health Department released a public statement. It was published on Facebook. It addresses all citizens and the mayor and all of you on this city council. It states in part, every Phelps County resident needs to join us in taking the necessary steps to prevent the spread of this deadly disease. We also urge every community leader to continue to promote and support the message that compliance with the above stated guidelines is necessary to help prevent prevent catastrophic increases in hospital admissions. And we heard from them tonight that Rolla is indeed in dark times. It's easy to want to shut down, isn't it? To try to ignore that we have to have masks on and be away from our loved ones.
Tara, one more minute, please.
But that's not how we solve this. Now here in Rolla, people from around the world work, study, and live here. I have people in my building from Asia and Africa, and they are some of the most friendly neighbors. Rolla has many different cultures and religions: Christians, Buddhists, Wiccans, Muslims, Hindus, people who practice indigenous religions, and I'm sure even some of the African diasporic religions. All of these religions have a tradition of some kind that celebrates the light of hope. This week, Hindus celebrated Diwali. Diwali is a festival of lights.
Excuse me, Tara, about 30 seconds, please. About 30 seconds.
Oh. Am I lagging?
No, I said, can you perhaps another 30 seconds so we could...
Oh, sure. All right. So I wanted to encourage you all to be a light in the dark, and for every citizen to be a light in the dark. And you have the support of the healthcare community, of other professionals and citizens in doing a mask mandate and a social gathering limitation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tara. Next, we have Rebecca Selpine.
Hi guys, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Participated in Rolla Unwrapped. I took it upon myself to contact 7 participating businesses here in Rolla to ask if any of them would enforce a mask mandate so my family and I could shop for Rolla Unwrapped. Every single one of them gave me a canned response that began with, "The Rolla City Council has not mandated a mask requirement." Every single one of them. It was a canned response that was put out there towards anybody that asked about a mask requirement. In August, my daughter tried to get her driver's license. We called Core office and asked them, can we make an appointment? Is there anything we can do? There's lines full of people with no masks. They said, absolutely not. I said, fine, if I show up early, can I get an employee to wear a mask so that we can get her driver's license? They told me, absolutely not. If I wanted a driver's license from a place that required a mask, I needed to go to a town that had a mask requirement. We made a 4-hour round trip to get a driver's license because the Core office in Rolla refused. The employees refused to put a mask on because they stated the city council did not mandate it. It's been happening for 9 months. We literally can do nothing. I need new tires on my car. I can't get new tires on my car. It's just ridiculous, to be quite honest. We're past the point of education. Everybody knows at this point. We are past the point of being nice. We tried that. I was told for 9 months if I didn't want to be around people who weren't wearing a mask, I needed to stay home. I have. I've lost 9 months of my life. It's time to turn the tables. If you don't want to wear a mask, how about you stay home until you can have consideration for the rest of the citizens in this town? You don't have to wear a seatbelt, you will be fined. You don't have to wear a mask, you should be fined for the havoc that you wreak on the rest of your community. So as we start to talk about a mask mandate, I want everybody to keep in mind all of the people who have been trapped, all of the people who are quietly sitting around waiting for this council to take some action and make it so this community is safe for all of its citizens, not just for the loudest citizens. A 10-inch square piece of fabric on your mouth and nose does not steal your freedoms. Not being able to buy groceries or pick up your medications or get a driver's license, those infringe on your rights. So when we start to talk about enforcement, please keep in mind, if this council will not seek to enforce a mask mandate, absolutely no one else will take the advantage of doing that for you. The businesses will not do it. Obviously, there is a large population in this community who will not wear a mask just out of the kindness of their hearts. So please, next Monday, when you are talking about this mask mandate, keep in mind, it is not just a mandate. You have to enforce it. Enforce it like people's lives depend on it. They do. I think that's all I have for tonight. Deanne and David and Christine, thank you guys. You actually said a lot of what I wanted to say tonight. You guys are amazing. I appreciate your thoughts and your opinions on this. Hang strong, guys. I know this is a tough time to be city council. I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you so much for hearing me tonight. Hang tough, guys.
Thank you. Next speaker is Alex. Alex, in the essence of time, can you limit it to 3 minutes, please?
I will keep my comments as brief as possible. Fortunately, most of what I had wanted to say tonight has been addressed as well. So firstly, thank you to all of our city council members for having this discussion and pushing forward some action, because it is sorely needed based on even just the reports from the health department the last couple of weeks. I've been very vocally in favor of masks and social distancing since my university had to close in March. I am a student of Missouri S&T, and we had to spend all of the spring semester online, and even now I have remote accommodation for my courses into the fall. I'm graduating in December, and unfortunately, because we have no mandates, no regulations, my commencement is online. So that's a consequence of the last 9 months of not doing anything. So I hope moving forward we can put together some action and hopefully start to pick up the pieces for the next year. Because while it's uncertain what a vaccine will look like or how that will impact the future with COVID-19, I think it's safe to say that starting here with masks, maybe with building occupancy limits, with distancing, things like that are how we start to fix what has gone wrong. So thank you again to our council members, particularly to, I know Dave Schott, you had actually responded to one of my emails after the last meeting, so I really appreciate your communication, as well as specifically Deanna Marie, I've also been in touch with. They've been wonderful to work with. And I would like to make it clear to everybody, because somebody did mention to me on a Facebook post a while ago that masks may be just something else that people have to try to get a hold of. They may be a resource that are difficult to get when you start a mandate and everybody all of a sudden has to have one. I'd like to think that most of us by now have at least one or two, and that hopefully the supply chain has smoothed out a little bit. But I would also like to make it clear to everyone who is watching or may watch in the future that there are resources. I've been distributing masks since March. I sew them by CDC guidelines. So that is a double folded piece of high quality quilters cotton with elastic straps, and I've been distributing them completely free of charge. I have passed the 500 mark, but I lost the exact count around 328. So anyone is free to reach out to me at any point in time. Do not worry about finances if you're afraid that you can't afford a mask. I'm here. I can sew you 1, 5. I've sewn them for whole groups of employees. I've done as large as 30 in 2 nights. There are
just a couple more minutes.
resources,
And Alex,
and as
just
we
a
make
couple
that
more minutes,
transition,
please.
I think the community will support it. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Those were the only ones that called in, so I open it up to the floor now. If there's any citizen that would like, yes, please. Just please state your name and at least rough address as far as where you live.
Dr. Kessinger, chiropractic physician. I'm also I have a radio show, Healthy Concept, as well as I'm a teacher and a board certification postgraduate in immunology and in infectious disease. So having said that, I hear a lot of emotion in the room. That's very nice. Wanted to just keep in mind that this virus has a 99% survival rate. So I hear a lot of emotions here, but the survival rate is good and it's getting better, which thank God that is happening that way. I very much appreciate the hospital and what they've done. I have an aunt who has died from COVID, so it has touched my family. I have also I've had a friend, a very good friend of mine, who came down with COVID about a month and a half ago, and I'm absolutely convinced that this hospital here saved his life. So I'm very thankful for that. So don't think that I'm coming here as being contentious, but as Councilman Florence was asking for, I want to give a little bit of a counterpoint. And I recognize from all the studies, all the things I've heard tonight, I'm probably the only person in the room with a contrary opinion. So let's go ahead and endure this just for another 2 minutes, since I've endured the rest here. So first off, wearing masks is not without side effects. There are side effects, and there's unintended consequences. I've been watching you guys. I'm not calling anybody out, so don't worry about it. But I've seen touching of faces. I've seen readjusting masks. I've seen all of this, and we're talking about putting together education and teaching people how to wear masks. Now, please don't be offended by that. I'm just saying that there's a natural thing. I'm sitting here breathing in this thing, and humidity comes up. It makes my eyes dry. My eyes get dry. I have a natural response. I'm going to scratch my eyes. The number one thing that causes infections to spread in respiratory illness is not through the aerosol through here. It's through hands. It's through touching. It's through people not washing their hands. That has been proven and demonstrated much more so than the mask wearing. There's science all over the place that shows that mask wearing is not necessarily the panacea. I'm hearing this. It's almost like we've made it a religious thing that wear the mask, we stop the virus. It doesn't happen that way. We're not stopping this virus. The virus is not stoppable. We learn how to manage with it. Good hygiene, social distancing, all these things are going to have preeminent ability to do more than simply putting the mask on. It's a false sense of security. Also, people who have COPD, and by the way, in our clinic, it's not uncommon for me to find people who have what's called functional COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This is in the earlier stages. When you have COPD, I know I'm very short in time, but when you're COPD, when you breathe out, it's a restrictive lung disease like tuberculosis, or what I have, sarcoidosis. When you breathe in, you have a restriction in your lung capacity. Chronic obstructive disease, you can't breathe out. When you can't breathe out, you have a buildup of CO2 in your body. That buildup of CO2 in the body, when you breathe in the mask, you're breathing more CO2. So this is detrimental to these people. And there's a lot more folks out there than we recognize, especially 60 years old and older, that do have COPD. There are more things we can talk about. Right now, there's moisture inside my mask right now. That becomes a breeding ground for virus. If I touch my eye, then it goes down here and gets my mask, it's a breeding ground. My innate immunity. Innate immunity is your first response. It's the response that your body has to block an infection from getting in. You get those droplets in there, you reduce your innate immune system's ability to fight it off, and when you do that, now you've invited the infection to come into your body. Now, also, I love what Councilman Higgins said. You know, why don't we just mandate people quitting eating sugar? Why don't we mandate people stopping drinking soda? You didn't say that, by the way.
But that's what I meant.
know you
That's
did not
what I
say
meant.
that. But what I'm saying is that, yes, there's measures that we can all take for the better of the community and the better for ourselves. But as we talked about in the nursing homes, this is where, unfortunately, the majority of people are dying. But what's happening is they've been locked down, they're all masked up, and they're still getting it. All I'm saying is that the mask is not the end-all, be-all. It is not the panacea. And when we place it in that high hierarchy, we give people a false sense of security. And with that, I thank you very much.
Doctor, I have a question, if you may.
Yes.
And thank you for that. If you were to advise us and start with the assumption that we don't want to get people sick, but what mitigation strategies would you suggest? So mask or maybe, but it's not the full answer. So what would be your top 2 or 3 things, if you were sitting in our shoes, we would do?
Okay, so first off, largely, I've heard different things, but largely in the community, if you go to Kroger, if you go to Walmart, 90% of the people are wearing masks. People are already kind of doing this. Education campaigns on how to wash hands. I mean, it sounds simple, but Semmelweis back in 1848, sorry about this, I'll be very short, but in 1848, Dr. Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician, was in Austria, and he had this crazy idea. At that time, people were dying from infections. It was the #1 killer. Average lifespan was like 40 years of age because so many people dying early from infection. He had this crazy idea, if you wash your hands before you deliver a baby, then you'll have less sepsis for the mother and less babies dying from infection. They ran him out on a rail, and he died as an alcoholic in an asylum, a sane asylum. That's another story for another day. But what happened with him was that he brought this idea of hygiene, and this has been largely one of the best measures that we can do. Washing hands, and also, I'm sorry, I want to make one more point, is that we have been having where we're at right now, we haven't had a mandate, thankfully. We have not had a mandate for all these months. We haven't had upticks. We have not had upticks. We've been going to church. We've been doing our daily functions. We've been going to Walmart. We've been doing our daily lives. We haven't had upticks until just recently. And then what I heard here was that there were super spreader events. What I would suggest is, what about the super spreader events? Because that really could be the elephant in the room. That could be the thing, and then we're steering all this direction to do all these mandates and all these kind of, more restrictive things and that kind of thing. But it could be that we're looking in the wrong direction. So I would say looking
So
at
the health
those things,
department
look
has
at that.
consistently told us that the gatherings, I won't say are the biggest concern, but going back to somebody passing you by in Walmart doesn't have necessarily the significance of these gatherings, that these gatherings are really the issue, church gatherings and private gatherings or whatever. Would you agree to that, with that?
Okay, so because I'm up in front of here, I want to make sure of what I'm agreeing to. Could you say that again?
Okay. So I think what you're saying is the mask help in certain circumstances, but I'm focusing on the gatherings, what you called the super spreading events. Okay.
I was talking about the parties. You had a Halloween party and another party that you had referenced.
Yes.
That's what I was talking about.
But gatherings in general, of large gatherings, whether they're private Halloween parties, dances, or church services, or any of these things where a large number of people are getting in close proximity, particularly indoors. Would you say that's a cause for concern?
Well, I would say this, that up until recently, we haven't had upticks in the infection rates. We've been meeting in our churches. We've been doing that, and the churches, by far and large, have been doing a great job at being able to self-regulate in their management of how they're doing that, and that's the way I would suggest to do it.
Okay, so you're dodging a bullet here. You've said that thus far we haven't had a problem, and I would agree with that. If you go back to the data, but there's no denying that a graph that looked like that is now looking like that. So, yes, in the rearview mirror, we haven't had a problem, but clearly where we are today, there is an uptick.
Yes, there is an uptick, but as you said, you have referenced 2 or 3 or 4 different parties that have been in this community that have largely been sought to be responsible for that. So I would go after that and not go after the other things that we've already been doing, and it hasn't been constant.
So going after, I don't want to put words in your mouth, But I'm going back to the gatherings. Are you saying that that's where the council should focus, on limiting these gatherings?
Okay, so now I've veered up into territory that I'm uncomfortable making decisions about. I want to talk about the
I know.
mask.
I'm trying to get your expert opinion. I'm buying what you're selling,
Right.
looking in the rearview mirror, but you're not really offering me anything as far as go forward.
Okay, so my point in offering was that the mask is not the end-all, be-all. It's not doing everything we think it's doing. And in fact, if we look at the statistics from countrywide, people who've had draconian lockdowns, masks, versus people like Sweden, there's not been much difference. Actually, Sweden had a more relaxed look at it, and they are now largely in a much better shape than the countries that had major lockdowns back in March and April. Now they're revisiting lockdowns again, because I said the virus is going to have to come through the community. It's going to have to burn itself out in order for this to be done.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for council? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Johnny Jones. I live in Brookridge. I don't have none of the credentials that all these people just came up here with. I'm just a common person that lives in Rolla. I talked to one person in my ward. Who's the other person in my ward? Is he here? Okay. Like I briefly told him, all right, most of you have already made up your mind what you're going to vote on, what you're not going to vote on, and that's not what you're here for. You're here to represent the people in your ward. And like I told this gentleman here, only time I seen those two is when I came here. Neither one of them came saw me when I campaigned. None of them came to my door to ask me my opinion on hot items, particularly this. You guys need to go out there and find out what your people want. When you go and make a vote and you don't talk to the people in your ward, that means you're giving your opinion, not your ward's people's opinion. And that's not right, because you're here to represent me and you're here to represent Rolla, and you're not doing it. If you don't go out and talk to your people and go by their majority, not by your opinion. All right? I have not worn a mask since day one, knock on wood. I haven't got attracted. And people might say, well, you don't have nobody in your family that's in the critical part. Yes, I do. My wife's a type 2 diabetic, been that way since she's been 2.5 years old. My wife has the same philosophy as I do. Yes, there's something out there, not denying that one bit. All right, things need to be done, yes. But I have a medical condition myself where I can't wear a mask. All right, so it shouldn't be forced upon me because of that. All right, if people want to wear a mask, by all means, let them wear a mask. All right, that's their right. Just like it's my right not have to wear one, no matter if it's a medical condition or not. The thing is, I've been sitting here all evening, and the main thing that's really making me mad is I can't speak for the other wards because I don't know anybody else in the other wards that I talked to see if you guys come out and talk to them. But I know my ward. You guys have not come out and talked to me. So I'm assuming, especially by the way that most of you are talking, you haven't gone out and talked to your people in your ward either. And before you make your decision on Monday, I think you need to do that. And I agree, there's probably a 50-50 split. A lot of people want the mask, a lot of people don't want the mask. All right? There are businesses you come in. One lady made a comment, you can't go to CVS. I'm sorry, I hate to tell you this. Yeah, you can, because my prescription's at CVS too. And when the line's too long outside, we have to go inside. My wife goes in. So yeah, we can get medicine, we can get food. There's ways to get stuff with or without a mask. But, and like all these other people said, we have nothing but negative stuff up here basically, except for with one gentleman, which I appreciate you coming up here with the credentials. Like I said, I'm just an ordinary person, you know, and we love living here. We've been here since '06. I've only been in the council meeting for three times, 2 times because of this. This is my 3rd time coming here, so I don't come here all the time and complain. So when I show up, it's for a good reason. I help run an organization, softball league. I mean, not softball, but the Ribs League. I help, and we had to cancel it because of last year. And we got to get these kids to do something. And these kids are missing out on stuff. They're missing out on dances. like this one lady, she's missing out on her graduation, you know, stuff like that, and that's a shame. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you go out and talk to your people instead of making your own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to City Council? That's okay. If not, Monday, oh, okay.
It's on the layout there too, so just so you know, they're like 10 seconds behind everyone that wants to speak.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to prolong it, but just to be fair.
Good evening, everybody. Abel De La Garza, my Missouri driver's license, read 501, Canterbury Court, Rolla, Missouri. With that being said, just want to take a chance to introduce myself. Maybe you see me, maybe you haven't. I run around Rolla every Saturday morning, about 12 miles of the biggest bag I can carry. I've been doing that consistently since Memorial Day. So, for those of you, that's me. Moving forward, first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody here for your selfless service. Being a veteran of 10 years, active duty service, multiple deployments, combat deployments, I just want to say thank you. I understand what it's like to be put in positions
Yeah,
where
sir,
you gotta...
can you hold on 1 second?
Yes, sir.
He has to unmute so they can
Yeah, if you can unmute where you're at so others can hear you.
Sure, how do I do that?
I just told you what to do. I didn't know how to do it.
Oh, all right.
Is there a mouse there?
I don't see anything. Oh, here we go.
And it might be on the next screen.
Unmute, right there.
Unmute. All right.
There you go.
We
You don't
good
have
to
to
go?
start over. We heard enough of it.
Start over? Am I
No.
Everybody else needs to go.
Okay, so just with that being said, 10 years of honorable service. I moved to Rolla, Missouri, 2018 when I got out. I originally grew up in California. born and
Remember,
raised.
3 minutes.
Okay, good to
Just,
go.
I appreciate your background, but get to the
Awesome.
issue.
Going straight to the point. Mostly, gentleman right here just hit on a lot of the stuff. But with that being said, a lot of the driving force that I want to say that we're doing, I heard a lot of talking about the implementing control measures and so on and so forth. One thing that I haven't heard much about is preaching the whole immune system, immunity support, right? One of these things that I pride myself on is I can guarantee you with every bit of my life that my immunity has way better force than this mask does, okay? What's that being said, I do healthy exercise and nutrition. That coincides with my immunity. One of these lockdowns and restrictions is going to take the gym out of that equation, so there goes the exercise. Now I only have the exercise without the nutrition. So I need both of those things. A lot of the things that these things also going to cause is veterans, all right? I'm speaking for myself, but I would like to think veterans are very similar in thought. We utilize the gym, believe it or not. We utilize the gym to deal with our issues. A lot of us have been diagnosed with PTSD. That's one of our outlets that we use. I know when it was shut down, myself along with other veterans along in the community, it was detrimental to our health. Detrimental. And I mean that as easy as possible. But not being able to have that outlet for us at a mental capacity is something maybe you might want to look forward to as far as closing down certain businesses and how that might operate. Just one more thing before I leave. I know I'm short on time. I heard a lot about comparing wearing masks to driving and what we are allowed to do and what we aren't allowed to do. Just so we're off, is there any veterans on the panel at all? No? Okay, so just so we're on the same page, all right, driving is a privilege. Okay? It is given to you. Freedom is not given to you, it's earned. My brothers and sisters didn't fight for our freedom so that we can sit here and have it taken away. So driving is a privilege, right? We earn that, we get that, it is given to us. It can be taken away, right? Freedom is not like that. So just so we can decipher the two different things as far as following the law and freedom and how they kind of decipher. And that's easy to do when you actually, you go out there and you fight for that freedom. It changes your perspective on, comparing it to a driver or abiding by those kind of laws. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody's time. I really hope you consider my testimony along with the other positive testimonies about, man, it's hard to be in your positions. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, but Godspeed and thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, can you check if anyone out there would like to speak? In the essence of time, are you all together of one mind? And would you mind waiting till Monday?
I'm actually a non-COVID thing, so.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Victoria Culver. I'm here to speak on masks, and
Miss, can you, louder?
louder? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm here to.
Yes,
one?
that's fine.
Okay. I'm here to speak on the masks. I'm from Ward 6, and I'm totally against the masks. I do COVID cleanings for a living at Surf Pro of Rolla. And I have yet to get sick. I have not worn a mask, and I'm not for it. Please consider what the other side would like. You are here to represent us, and I'm telling you, I am not for it, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. If we could hold our COVID comments till Monday, again, we're going to have a whole dedicated, however many hours you want to talk. Megan, do you have something non-COVID related?
I just have a brief question, and I'm asking this question since we do live in the age of misinformation. I wanted to make sure that we have transparency for the people in our community. On election day, I had seen numerous political campaign signs posted at our polling stations. I just wanted to know, what are the city rules against those?
There are election rules. My understanding that signs, and I think signs would include people wearing T-shirts and the like, have to be 25 feet from the door to that polling location. That's number one. And I think if it's private property, I think it's at the discretion at the private property owner. With respect to city facilities, signs of any sort, including garage sales and whatever, are not allowed on city properties or in city right-of-way, which, simply speaking, is the 2 or 3 feet along a curb or something like that.
Right, and city property consists of schools, stuff like that, right? Like that's.
Maybe I have to defer to Larry on that. I don't know about schools. I don't want to speak to schools, but city property, meaning right-of-way and city-owned facilities. Okay, so that applies the same? Yeah,
Well,
okay.
my other question, so it is a no, that we can't have political signs?
It's absolutely a no. And every election season, so come April, I'll make the same statement that I do every April. People are welcome to put signs out, but they're not allowed to be in the public right-of-way or on public facilities.
Yeah, I remember when I got the booklet from Carol that it had said, because I get that. You wouldn't want signs in the park or in random places like that. So to finish my question, it's actually for Dave of Ward 3. Now that we do know that the rules are clear, when you were placing these signs at the polling stations, I'm just curious, did you reach out to the property owner, which in this case is the city?
Sure. I should be clear that the day before the election, I actually called the county clerk to ask the exact questions that you're asking me now. And the county clerk actually said, you have to be 25. I actually didn't speak with the county clerk. I spoke with one of the county clerk's representatives. The county clerk, her name was Katie. And so I actually talked with Katie, and she said, actually, I don't know the answer. So she went to talk to Pam Grow. And Pam Grow wasn't available to talk to me, but Katie came back to me and said, I just talked to Pam, and the signs need to be at least 25 feet from the front door. I said, is there anything else I need to know? And Katie said, no, that's all that Pam said. So just for your clarification, in terms of what I did, it was directly in relation to having discussed the issue with Pam Grow. Now, I've actually done a lot more research into this because I think I had maybe a similar concern that you did about what is the legality and whose job is it to enforce this. My understanding that it was Pam Grow's job as county clerk to enforce the legality of those signs being placed. I certainly understand that signs cannot ever be on public property during campaigns or anything like that, but my understanding, actually from a number of other articles as well as the Missouri statutes, is that signs for election day, there's one day of the year which is election day, or potentially, I guess, a couple of days a year because there's more than one election day, where signs could be placed at the 25 feet. And that was my understanding. That was what Pam was telling me the day before. And I had a number of conversations with her the day of the election as the signs were getting taken down. To me, I think there's still a little bit of unclarity. I've actually called the Secretary of State to find out a little bit more. I'm curious of the same answer that you are. I would agree that if we understand that it's either allowed or it's not, we should be following those rules. So if I did something that was not allowed, I certainly take full credit for the fact that I did that, but I was trying to do what I understand was the correct thing based on what the law was and what the county clerk told me. So I can't tell you more than that. We could.
I'm really big on having completely neutral polling stations.
Can I
That's
ask,
fine,
can
but
I
I-
ask a dumb question? Did you call the city and ask what's appropriate on city property?
Well, the reason I didn't feel that necessary is because I was under the impression that the county clerk is the one who actually controls the polling place, like the places that are used for polling places have an agreement to whatever the election rules are. That was at least my understanding, and that's what I understood from Pam Grow. So while, like I said, I understand that signs cannot be placed on any right-of-ways, on any public property, any other days of the year, my impression was that if you're a polling place, you were allowing that. Now, like I said, in the end, if there's something that I did that was wrong, I take full responsibility for that. But I was, you can ask Pam Grow and Katie at the county there, trying to do what the law was based on what I was told by the county. So
Do you think
that's all I can tell you. Yep.
Do you think being a councilman that you should have done that extra research? just
I
to
think
make
we're,
sure?
yeah, with all due respect.
I mean, I don't know what you want me to say,
Well,
but-
hold on.
Yeah.
I don't think the intent of this particular section, yes, asked a question, but I don't think it's appropriate to get into a debate.
I'm not attempting
what he
to do
did or he
that,
didn't do either, so.
Right.
But we're clear on the rules now.
Yeah, I think your point was made.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Any other citizens, non-COVID related? Okay, with that, the council has one issue in closed session to talk about real estate. Is there a motion to go into closed session for
So
such
moved.
purpose?
Second.
All right. We need a vote.
Yeah.
Roll call vote.
Roll call.
Schneider?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yay.
Reuter?
Yes. You've been making all the right decisions.
Yes. Bolin?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
I mean,
Shot?
Yeah, I'm not trying to make any contention about the sign thing, but I think there is actually questions as to whether
Crow?
they're allowed in public.
Mush?
He's gone.
Allen?
Yes.
Yes, Frank.
Eberly?
Yes.
Lyons?
Yes.
How it's what?
Cover the nose.
That was exciting.
Yeah. So much more to look forward to.